Hello and welcome to another episode of Going Free. For everyone who is here with me, let me have a quick look over here at the chat. It appears that I can't pull the video up on the same computer that I'm working on at the moment because there is no way to mute the audio before it appears that it has been taken away before the video pops up. So I would have to somehow do that simultaneously to prevent the lag from then feeding back up through the speakers and the microphone. So I will be looking over here. Jan Uniter, hello indeed to you as well. Jennifer, let me get this mouse to work. I see Justin, Syrup, of course, our intrepid moderator. Thank you again for being here, brother. I know it's late in the lovely country in which you dwell. I see Laura, great to see you. Of course, Spartan Warrior Queen, fantastic to see your face. Sean, a lot of great people I see already in the chat. As I am here alone, and there is the Great Order. Great to see you, brother. As I am alone here, I'm going to rely upon you all to tweet and gab the fact that we are live right now to get this message out to people so that they can hear it. Specifically, what we are going to be discussing today is your Q&A and some Q&A that we found. We had a great contributor and member of our community, Jilly Storm, put together a list of some of the statements that she saw on the previous videos. I think it was the general discussion relative to the use of anti-white and anti-whiteism in your conversations to defeat anti-whites, as well as the summary version of that. I decided, just so you all know, I decided to do the summary version because the long videos are often intimidating to people who are new to white well-being, intimidating in general. So it's important that the information is so critical that it needs to be delivered to people by whatever means they are able to imbibe it. And so that if that means that it's got to be an 8-minute video or a 9-minute video, whatever it came out to, then that's what it has to be. So effectively what I did there was I just printed up my notes again and then looked at those notes and shared that with the audience. So I know a lot of people had some questions about application, about using anti-white and anti-whiteism. So we're going to address that today. Specifically, there was an email to me, and I would like to give credit to Daryl for really prompting this. I would also like to give credit to Philosophy Cat, who I was having a discussion with about how to conduct these streams the other night. And I was going through some different ideas that I had about sharing the information, about teaching people how to use it. And I was thinking about doing a stream where I would just address the content that I wanted to cover, and then in that stream and immediately begin another stream in which we could have a Q&A about it, and we could talk about it for a while, however long that took. And that was motivated by many of you who had said, well, the video was so long, there were a lot of other pieces of information that came in, and the actual content was broken up as a consequence. And so maybe rethink working that, and I'm responding to that. Anyhow, I was talking with Philosophy Cat about that, and she said, well, why don't you do a video first with the content and then do the live stream with the Q&A? And I thought that was a brilliant idea. So much credit to her and her contribution to our community. And that's what we're doing here today. Now, as I say, specifically, Daryl reached out to me with an email, which I will read to you all. Daryl wrote, I enjoyed your recent How to Defeat the Charge of Racist video, and I wondered if you would do a follow-up video as to how we should try to mold this new term anti-white, similar to racist. It may be met with denial, embracement, sarcasm, and education. There must be appropriate and inappropriate ways to respond to that. So what do you advise is appropriate and what is inappropriate? Kind regards, Daryl. Thank you very much for that. I also had a conversation with Jilly, as well as some others of you that I am very appreciative of, wherein people shared that they were fearful of using the term anti-white and the terms anti-white and anti-whiteism. And that is another significant roadblock that we need to address here today in this Q&A. So the first thing I would like to ask is everybody hearing me okay? Is the stream coming across okay? Is it smooth, the video footage? Is the audio fine? Am I loud enough? Am I too quiet? How does everything sound and look? And while we wait for a couple other people to show up again, if you could please tweet this stream out to your circles of influence. If you could please gab it out to your circles of influence. If you could also please post it to your Minds account. If you could please post it to your Facebook accounts. There are many different ways that we can reach. And thank you all for the feedback on the audio and the video. Thank you very much for that. There are many different ways that we can reach out to our circles of influence. And as you know, here when it comes to Prometheanism, here when it comes to white well-being, we don't use the sort of verbiage. We don't have the same dialectics. We don't have the same persona or otherwise indicators that are associated with previously demonized ideologies and ideas. So you can feel safe to share this sort of thing with a broader community than you would otherwise be able to share. I mean, you're not going to see some kind of a big scary banner behind me. So if it's, as an example, so you can reach out to more people than you would otherwise reach out to. And this is something that people are able to accept, even if they don't necessarily agree with it. They don't come to those instantaneous conclusions that this is somebody I have to immediately ignore. This is somebody that I have to immediately denounce as some form of evil, some sort of synonym of evil. So if you could please do that, reach out to your communities, circles of influence, and bring in as many as we can, that would be fantastic. Again, when you send out those messages, we are discussing the phrase anti-white and anti-whiteism, and specifically how to address the charge of racist, how to turn this back on our opposition, on our victimizers, because that is the way that we are defeated. And now this term, and what's important here is that the concept racist and the concept racism are just the most salient examples of these weaponized concepts that are used against us to defeat us in argumentation, confrontation, conversation, and really to win debates when there is insufficient evidence for an anti-white to win a debate. They just will drag out this old horse, this old dead horse, and they'll begin beating it again for you. And that's all it takes. And there are many reasons, as I spoke about in the longer video, sort of the general discussion of how to address being called a racist, how to turn this back, how to negate it, and specifically addressed in the summary. But there are many powerful elements to this, and that's what you need to appreciate. It's not just a matter of coming up with a word or an idea that is just as good as any other. And I know that in the West, we are inclined to think that any specific idea is equivalent to any other idea or just as good as any other idea, because we have been reared in this notion that there is no superior, inferior, there is all just equal. Everybody's opinion is the same. Everybody's suggestion is the same, but nothing could be further from the truth in the real world. You see that demonstrated in, say, business. You see that demonstrated in professional sports. You see that there is indeed, you see that demonstrated in warfare, that there is indeed superior and inferior. And when those clash, superior is always victorious. So having said that, the use of the phrase anti-white, the concept anti-white, and the concept of anti-whiteism is superior to the alternatives out there. It's not that you have an idea and it's just as good, and you have an example of, or example of two of how it worked for you or satisfied you. It does. That's the immaterial. What's material is that this is superior. This always works, and the ways that I've seen some people suggest to handle the charge of racist and racism are specifically the things that I demonstrated with arguments are inferior to this position. So this is very important that we communicate this information and that we use it and that we help each other to use it, because we have all been infected from the moment that we were able to imbibe information with these mean pathogens, with these Achilles heels that have set us up for failure and have set up the anti-whites for success when it comes to these conversations. So this is an ongoing process between and among all of us. We all are going to be helping each other mature sociopolitically and use this new vocabulary to our advantage, to the advantage of white well-being, and therefore the recapturing of our destiny. So specifically what Daryl is asking, and before I get into that, I will ask the chat, I will ask all of you, do you all have questions about using the phrase anti-white or anti-whiteism? Have you had scenarios where you wanted to use it and you didn't because you were fearful of using it? You were fearful of saying the name of our people. And why were you fearful of using it? What did it mean? There's something very telling there, that when you think about using anti-white and anti-whiteism in conversation, to feel fear at that moment, there's something very telling, and we can get to that, and we can cover that in the course of this Q&A. I see somebody writes, in the professional world, does that mean fearful of using anti-white in the professional world? Okay, well, we'll go ahead and address that right now. I think that was a Gene asked this. We'll go ahead and address it right now. The fact that, hello, Sue. I see Sue in the chat as well. Good to see you. And I think I saw Jilly Storm go by as well. So hello to Jilly Storm. You are most welcome. She thanks me for delving deeper into anti-whiteism, helping her in her bravery, indeed. And so we have Jill and we have Jean, and we have this idea that you simply can't use it in the professional world. You can't use anti-white in the professional world. I'm going to ask you all, and this is where we're going to dig to a very painful element here. This is where we're really going to take all of us another step going free. Why is it? Why do you all think that it is? Why do you all feel fear in using the phrase anti-white? What does that mean? What is this context that has been created for us that causes you to feel fear, or causes you to feel like it would be inappropriate to say that something is anti-white? Gene says social exclusion. Not exactly sure what you mean by that. Well, yes, you're the outcast. Oh, I see what you're saying. You will be excluded from society, right? Well, that's one of the consequences of when you are, for example, called a racist. When these anti-white slurs are used upon us, ostracism from our communities is very often a consequence of being determined to be a racist or engaging in racism. Exactly. So what you're saying there is it's a couple links down the line, but thank you for participating, Gene. That's fantastic. What you're saying there is that if you say anti-white, if you say that something is anti-white, that must mean that you care about white people. And what is the moral framework when it comes to caring about white people in Western civilization? What is the moral framework that the news and entertainment media has established for us when it comes to either caring for, well, let's just leave it there. I see Shell. Good to see you, Shell. When it comes to seeing, or when it comes to caring about white people, rather, what is the moral framework? Some with an interesting last name, I won't say because We very often have mothers and their children watching, but a Mr. Sum says evil. Right, exactly. If you are seen, it's deemed Mr. Fancy Pup looks like says white supremacy. It's deemed white supremacist. Whites are the oppressors. Indeed, I see that on the chat as well. So what it means then is that you are immoral in the moral framework that the anti-whites have established for us in the anti-white narrative. This is very important, folks. And this is going to be something that will, once you not only hear me say this and understand it or know it, once you come to own it, once you come to own this reality, you will then be able to communicate it to your friends and family and begin making a real difference. Does that make sense? You have to actually become this truth to be able to share it with the passion and energy that it needs to be shared, and in the right amounts that it needs to be shared in order to help our brothers and sisters out in society, in your homes, to help them go free. So does that make sense? It's not just a matter of I see Josh Randall with a super chat. Thank you very much, good sir. I want to wear my no white guilt shirt to work, but I'm fearful that I will be told that I'm not allowed to wear it there or have worse consequences. It's entirely possible that you have anti-whites who are in charge at your place of employment, and they will say that you're not allowed to wear something that says no white guilt. That's entirely possible. What's great about that is that anti-whites reveal their position, that they are anti-white if they object to the position of no white guilt. What they're saying is that, no, you should feel white guilt. And the reasons are all of these pretexts, and the pretexts are what we use to inflict harm on Western kind and Western civilization. So they are revealing their hand. So if you know that your manager or you know that your employer, etc., are anti-white already, then yes, they almost assuredly are going to object to you objecting to anti-white ideology. So you need to be, when it comes to things like employment and the like, you need to be careful about those things. You don't want to lose your job. You need to continue to be a functional member, paying your bills and etc., in order to spread white well-being to friends and family. That's very important. Thank you very much for the super chat, Josh. Josh actually sent a picture over Gab. If you didn't see it on Gab, it's fantastic. He's got a Born Guilty book. He's got the shirt. He's got the mug, all in the same shot. Looks fantastic. So if you don't follow Josh over on Gab, you should start following him. I see Brandon says, we love you, brother. I love you back. Much love in return. Thank you for that. What books, let me see, Seek and Destroy, what books would you recommend so I can be knowledgeable enough to red pill my family, friends and family? Well, we try to say, and I'm going to be trying to say more, go free. Because going free is it's a verb. We're going free of it, and it's an important thing. So this is, and the vocabulary is very important, and that's one of the reasons why we are going to be doing these streams. The verbiage we use is critical to the context in which these discussions take place. So we need to use the very specific verbiage so that we put our victimizers in positions of weakness. We can't allow them to be in positions of strength. Rather, they have to be in positions of weakness so we can win these discussions. Keep in mind that we have been trained to lose all of these discussions from birth. The anti-whites have been trained to win all of these discussions from birth. So let me get to this. So talking about books, what books can you use to help people go free? Well, first of all, my book called Go Free. That is extremely efficacious when it comes to helping yourself, helping to treat the mean pathogens with which you are infected. And that's what's really important. All of this other, I guess, decoration, I guess, to a discussion. All of this, these additions of conversation that don't get to the point can be helpful, but getting immediately to the point, getting immediately to the root of the problem takes care of all of the, it's sort of like the branch. If you break the branch from the tree, then everything on the branch is done. If you break twigs off the branch, you still have a branch that's intact. So you have to address the core of these things rather than just the symptoms, rather than just the twigs at the end, to stick with the analogy. Of course, Born Guilty is absolutely replete with the application of a lot of the things that I teach in Go Free. And I'm working right now on the second edition of Go Free, which is going to be much better than the first. So that will be available in the next month or so. But getting back to the point that we stepped away from for a moment, and that is the system of morality that the anti-whites have established for us. You're fearful of saying, or reluctant to say, anti-white, because by saying anti-white, it means that you have a little bit of concern or care, at least a little bit, for the well-being of white people. And that means, according to the moral structure established by the anti-whites and the anti-white narrative, that you are immoral. So if it is immoral to care about white well-being, what is moral? If it is immoral to care about white well-being, this is what you have been taught your entire life without the anti-words actually saying it. You see, the genius to control over people that the anti-whites have exerted over us is this leading you down a path, this sort of circuit board of options, and they restrict your number of conclusions, the number of conclusions that you can draw from any given idea. And once they have you on that path, they know that you are going to be restricted to a conclusion or a couple of conclusions that always work to their benefit. So if it is immoral to work for the well-being or to care about the well-being of white people, what is moral? What is the system of morality that the anti-whites have set up in this country, and how much, and all over the West, and how much harder would it have been for them to just openly say, here's what is moral? Any ideas? Somebody says they got a 3-day Facebook ban for posting a no white guilt meme. We can't even say we won't get guilted. Well, indeed, and they reveal themselves, and that it is a beautiful thing. Celebrate when the anti-whites persecute you for saying no white guilt. That is cause for celebration. So let's see. Does anybody, and I saw a super chat, so we will address that. Okay, healing arts with I guess that's the Danish. I guess that's Danish krona, 100 Danish krona. And he or she writes, hoping to join under one simple cause, no isms, which will never be descriptive or productive or goal focused. I prefer just pro or anti-European. White is misleading in terms of, i.e., Jews. No, I disagree. Or if Jews can claim that they're white, can all white people claim that they're Jews? If Jews can claim that they're white, then genetically, how is it that they're able to be distinguished from white people? Are Jews a people? And if so, then that means they're not the same people as whites or Western kind. And the reason I prefer to use white as an ancillary term to the term that I coined, which is Western kind, which represents our biospirit, who and what we are. That is what Western kind is. We have these little different hues of difference, of cultural difference within Western civilization, which makes perfect sense. And then we've drawn these lines guided by petty chieftains among our people, and then we have gone to war, and that has been a terrible thing to fight wars against each other. And that is one of the reasons why we are now referring to ourselves as a group collective, so that this sort of internecine conflict doesn't happen again. We are a single people. We need to come together for the welfare of our people, and therefore the welfare of ourselves as individuals. And of course, why do we use ism? Well, we use ism because everyone across the West understands what an ism is. I described this when I was talking about anti-whiteism. As soon as you say ism, people understand that it's a concept, and they understand that it is an action, that actions derive therefrom. So that is why we use it. We have to speak to people in a language that they will be able to understand, and repeat then to their friends and families. So if you want to uh, go out to all of the hundreds of millions of whites across the West and then tell them that ism really doesn't mean X, Y, or Z, and that it should be something other, then be my guest, you will fail. I mean, unfortunately, that's just the reality. This goes back to the educating people when it comes to the use of racist. You will fail every time, and it has failed every time. So I wish you would take up the winning argument. That is, and then I wish that you take up the winning argument, the winning dialectic, and then you come back to us and you share the successes you will have. And that's another thing that I would like to do in the future, is have people share the successes. In fact, today, why don't we do that? If anybody has used anti-white since we last spoke of the use of anti-white, please go ahead and share it, and let me know how it went for you. This has been something that we have worked to over time, that I have shared with people, and they have come back to me with fantastic success stories in virtually every single case. And where they have failed, it's because of things like fear. It's because of what they thought people were going to think about them. But back to the question, of course, if it is immoral to work for white well-being, if it is immoral to care about white people to any degree, then the morality that anti-white ideology establishes is that it is moral to work for white ill-being. It is moral to harm Western kind and Western civilization. That is what you are up against as a people. Two totally different systems of morality. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a system of morality that has determined that it is good, it is a moral good to destroy you. Now they'll say, "Oh, it's not a moral good." That's not what we mean. But of course, they reveal that it is what they mean when they say that it is immoral to be concerned for the welfare of white people. Don't let them off the hook. So that's a really important point that I think it was Gene initiated earlier in the conversation about what it will mean if you use the term anti-white. And I'll tell you, I'll speak to that right now. How can you use the term anti-white and not get immediately fired from your job or expelled from your school or what have you? The way to do it is, let's say you're at the, and I've done this many times, and I've instructed others to do it, and they've had similar successes. Nobody was fired for it. But if you're in a conversation at work and something is blatantly anti-white that people are discussing, just say it as an offhanded observation. Wow, that's anti-white. And then let it go. You could even walk away at that point. It will sink into people every single time. And if you try this, please come back and let me know how it worked for you. If somebody hunts you down and say your manager comes and hunts you down and says, wow, did you say that something was anti? What does this exactly mean? That is you are in a very strong position relative to your manager, relative to your boss, whoever this is, to say, well, if something's anti-white, it's anti-white. If something's anti-Semitic, it's anti-Semitic. If something's, do you have a problem if I were to point out that something's anti-black? Of course, the coward that is your boss will say, well, no, I've got no problem. Well, then I've just said that I have no problem with anti-white, or with things that are, with saying that things are anti-white. Are you anti-white? I mean, do you have a problem with that? It's an extremely powerful position. And that's what we are going to talk a little bit about, is this application. Looks like we had a super chat from Real Punisher. Anti-white is all I use now. It literally shuts down our opposition before they can even gain a step. Unite, bros and sisters. Don't be afraid. Amen. Very well said, Real Punisher. That is the exact kind of comment that I get from people after they use this. They come back and they say, where I have always lost in the past, now I always win. So I want to hear from if any of you out there have tried it and not won, I want to hear why. And we could talk about that. And also, if you have tried it, or you're worried about trying it, and you're going to try it, and you think that maybe this will go wrong, or maybe that will go wrong, go ahead and give me the scenario, and I will help walk you through it. People need to hear this so that we can spread this information. This is, hey, Johnny, hello. Good to see you, brother. Let me see. Jessica, good to see you as well. Thank you for that. Love you back, Real Punisher. Yes, and everybody who has shown up since the beginning of the show, I'll just mention again, please reach out over your social media, Facebook, Twitter, Gab, share this stream so we can get as many people in here as possible, and we can begin using this verbiage, this extremely powerful verbiage, and the dialectics connected to this verbiage. And when you all are in streams elsewhere, when you're watching other shows, when you're in other streams, push this verbiage. Make sure that everyone out there is hearing it and that it begins to spread. This is when I talk about how we have something here that can spread rapidly. Nothing wins like success. All right. So we have something here that, as we, each of us, succeed in our conversations with anti-whites, our other brothers and sisters in the white positive sphere and outside of it, CivNats and all of these other people, are going to see the success, and they are going to want to become a part of it. So you get out there and use these dialectics, use this verbiage, win, and thereby win people to the cause of white well-being. And this can spread very fast. All of this conversation about, these folks who were saying, well, if you pass out leaflets or something, that's not brave, or if no, absolutely, that is courageous. Absolutely. If you have the right formula, this is not just another document with rape statistics on it, for God's sakes. This is the antidote. This is the antidote to mean pathogens, to what is inflicting and causing white noir in our people, to what is keeping us white guilted, so that we can't function, so that the true Western spirit within us can't come forward and work for our well-being and work for the recapturing of our destiny. This is the medicine that we need. Pass it on. Make sure that people know this information. So it looks like we have another super chat, I think. Christoph, super chatting with $4.99. Thank you very much. I have so easily and naturally started using this ideology. It feels right, and it is right. It absolutely is. Thank you very much for that super chat, Christoph. That is fantastic. Another victory testimony. That's what we want to hear. We want to hear these testimonies from people who are having victory in the cause for white well-being by employing this verbiage. You for the first time in your life, you will shut down the anti-white opposition. Nothing feels as good. I promise you, nothing feels so good as having had a lifetime of debating anti-whites and walking away frustrated, walking away angry, walking away with them with their nose in the air and smug, and you feeling, no matter how much you put into it, no matter how much information that you brought to it, that you somehow lost a piece of that conversation, or even the whole conversation. Nothing feels so good as totally reversing that scenario, as suddenly coming out as the victor in that conversation, watching the anti-white person, whatever they are, to one anti-white to one degree or another, walk away from that conversation being the one who feels like they are the immoral one, that you have ended up on the moral high ground, that they are the frustrated one pulling their hair out. Nothing feels as good as that. That is the feeling I always have. So people say, how do you stay so positive? How do you have such energy for the cause? Well, the reason I'm positive and the reason I have energy for the cause is because it doesn't matter what anti-white I go up against. I win every single time. Every time I have these debates with them, I win. And you will too. If you employ these dialectics and you employ this verbiage, you will win every time. And what does winning really mean? Well, when it comes to just some disgusting anti-white that isn't going to be altered from the hell that they desire for us, it means that you've sent that loser on his way with his or her way with their tail between their legs. When it comes to others, people who can potentially be reached, what that means is that you've gotten into them at some degree. At some point, you've reached them, and that one of two things is going to happen. And both of them are positive for us. Either that anti-white, if it's a white person or non-white, is going to begin going free from anti-white ideology, 1 degree at a time, 1 step at a time, and eventually potentially end up with us here serving white well-being, or they're going to be paralyzed by what you have shared. That is just as valuable to us as them coming to white well-being, is paralyzing them with indecision, paralyzing them with the belief that they're not 100% right, that you are not just some kind of monster that can be dehumanized and your rights taken away and your civilization taken away and your inheritance taken away. That is every bit as good as turning them to the cause of white well-being. Because trust in this, the anti-whites don't have that broad, many scores of millions of white people on their side. What they have is a broad scores of many millions of white people who have been paralyzed with indecision about whether or not they're right, about whether or not it's a moral thing to stand up and fight for our own well-being. That is their victory. Our victory will be bringing those people to our side, and to a degree, some of them paralyzing them with indecision about whether or not it's a good thing to oppose white well-being. So we have Bill O'Hora super chatting with $10. Let me grab a drink. Bill O'Hora super chatting with $10. Thank you very much for that fantastic super chat. He writes, Jason, with your very unique and totally new way of combating anti-whiteness and the positive heartening of our people, I am dumbfounded as to why you don't have at least 1 million subs. I appreciate that. There are a couple things actually there in your super chat that I'll speak to. The first of all is one of the reasons I don't have as many subs as I could have. Jared George clearly suffers from the same thing by way of his association with me and sharing of the same dialectics. And that is that we suffer a shadow banning par excellence. I mean, anti-whites go out of their way. Trust me, no one knows how powerful these dialectics and this verbiage is better than anti-whites. Trust in that. When they hear these arguments, when they hear these words, they say to themselves, oh, damn, we don't have responses for that. Oh, damn, we do have to reveal that we really are just motivated by jealousy and envy. And that they'll call, by the way, when they won't necessarily say jealousy and envy, they'll call it revenge, and they'll use one of the words when they are finally revealing what it is. They'll refer to it as revenge of some type. All right. They might call it making amends or what have you, but it is the revelation of revenge rather than the pretext of, say, something that we're strong because of diversity or something like this. They'll admit the truth. And so since they know that this verbiage and these dialectics reveal the truth about who and what they are and what their objectives are, they focus their energy on stopping it from reaching the people. That is why it is so important that you all reach out to your circles of influence and share this information. Reach out to, and if you haven't done this, I've suggested this to others. There are some good people already doing this, and we need more to do it. And that is to, go out to these CivNat communities and make an account, make a brand new account. Go out to, these other conservative communities, make a brand new account. Know when you go into those environments what you're up against. Know that you are up against very sick people. You are up against people who are absolutely just surfeited, laden with meme pathogens, and that they are ready at a moment's notice, at the drop of a hat, to begin virtue signaling anti-white ideology. Know that you're going into that environment, and then craft your introduction to white well-being appropriately. Like I said at the water cooler at work, you can simply say, that's anti-white, and walk away from the conversation. You shouldn't be so anti-white and walk away from the conversation. Maybe make a point that bolsters or semi-bolsters or is somehow in line with the point that's being discussed, and then say, and this element of it is anti-white, and then walk away from that discussion. That is an excellent way to introduce people to this verbiage, to these dialectics, and get them interested in white well-being. So the other thing I want to address, and since the verbiage is so powerful, I addressed last week the word anti-whiteness. And I encourage that we not use the word anti-whiteness, that we use instead anti-whiteism. The reasons are several. And just to sum up, number one, beauty matters. Verbiage matters. The way things sound matter. That is why ugly names are given to ugly things, and sweet sounding words are given to sweet things. Whiteness, if you have, well, let me just step back. Whiteness is just, in fact, ugly. That would be if we were against anti-whiteness. You are then professing whiteness as the name that we have given to who and what we are and what we create. And whiteness is ugly. If you can't appreciate that reality, then you just have to accept from those who can that, in fact, when it comes to, I mean, it's why they don't, when they're going to market a new food to you, or they're going to market a new cleaner to you or something, the names are always neutral at worst, but they make them as positive as possible, because positive names are going to win. Neutral names they can work with, ugly things they can't work with. Whiteness is something that is ugly. So there's that to consider when it comes to saying anti-whiteness. The other big issue is that whiteness is an anti-white slur. It's a term created by the regime that has attached to it not only white people, but also institutional racism and all of these other anti-white superstitions. So first of all, we do not use the verbiage of white oppression. So we do not say things like racist. We do not say things like anti-Semite. We do not say things like anti-whiteness. This is the verbiage of white oppression. We don't use their language. This is something that I butted my head against for year after year, and now I can say decade after decade, with people in the movement who said, you've got to use, I think another super chat went by, and maybe if I can move up really quick. Hold on, it was a syrup, I think. I'll get right back to it. We've got to use the language and the ideology and the dialectics that empower us. So when you say, well, first of all, by using the word whiteness, you instantiate it, you legitimize it. The same thing happens when you use the word racist. By using it, you legitimize it. You say it's a real thing. It has its power that it came to me with before me and will continue after me. And that is something you absolutely don't want to do. You don't want to legitimize their verbiage. We want to, in the same way that they dehumanize us, we want to delegitimize their verbiage. So, but when it comes to the term whiteness, if you say that you are anti-whiteness, effectively what you're saying is you are also in favor or anti this, anti-whiteness. You are in favor of institutional racism because that is what they are opposing with that terminology. It also puts the ball in their court, in the anti-whites court, to define what whiteness is. And you are not going to win that game. Every time you will lose that game. They have the news and entertainment media, they have the universities. You will lose every single time. Everyone across the West knows what an ism is. I spoke about that a moment ago. Everyone knows it's a concept and it's the actions that derive therefrom. So you can attach ism onto the end of anything. And every single white person out there, no matter how busy they are with their job, work, family, friends, etc., no matter how busy they are immediately going to understand what you mean by attaching ism. So when you say anti-white ism, they know that it's a concept, it's a thing, that people can be guilty of it, that ideas can be derived from it, that actions can be derived from those ideas. Does that make sense? You have then established this thought tree that people cannot escape from. This is what they do to us. This is the genius that the anti-whites use against us. And it is time that we turn the tables. And that's what we're doing here. We are turning the tables. So I'm not going to stop anybody from using, I wouldn't even dream of having such power. It's just impossible from using any specific term. If a person is stuck on saying, or for example, saying that they are a racist when they're charged with it, then go ahead and continue to lose thereby. But if you want to win, you can use these other strategies. So you're only selling yourself short. You're not harming me unless enough of you do it the wrong way. Then you will harm me because we won't save our society and our people. So let's see. We have Syrup here with a super chat. He writes, and this is fantastic, brilliant of you, Syrup. Thank you very much for the £5 super chat. Syrup doing double duty as always. Writes, push a leftist enough, and they will always admit that diversity is a punishment for the host. They know the truth, but they purposefully lie. Shame. Exactly. That is exactly right. And that is what we're going to get to these notes right now that I have. I see Nordic Valkyrie says, thank you, Jason, with a heart. You're most welcome. And a big heart in return to you. Thank you for that. I see DM in the chat. Let's see. Do we have any other comments in the chat before we get to some of these notes? Looks like we have a super chat by way of Streamlabs by Spartan Warrior Queen. Super chatting with $5. Thank you very much, my fair lady. Dear Jason and Jared, thank you both for your dedication to the cause of white well-being. Just checking how your new Streamlabs work. Your book, Born Guilty, is a masterpiece. Congratulations. Poseidon and I are happy to see you next Friday. Keep up the good work. Well, thank you very much for that, Spartan Warrior Queen. That is a significant and humbling honor. The kind things that you have said about Born Guilty, and I very much look forward to seeing you all when we do our interview over there with Poseidon, a big champion. Poseidon. I'll just say briefly that last night I spoke with Poseidon for about an hour about how he conducts his live streams, and then Jared George, my brilliant co-host, got on with him and spoke with him for another few hours, I believe, and Poseidon gave selflessly the entire time. That is the type of dedication we have to have. He is a man among men, and we are eternally grateful for the time he gives and the education he gave to us during last night. So very thankful to you for that, Poseidon. I know Jared is extremely thankful as well. So let's see what else we have here. Let me get a drink of coffee. Again, if you haven't already, please super chat this out to, or not super chat, but tweet this out to your circles of influence. This is about empowering you. This is about making you stronger. This is about making you more confident. This is about enabling you to help those brothers and sisters, those white brothers and sisters that are in your life, to help them to go free, to get that process started, to get them coming our direction, to give them the antidote. If you had the antidote for an actual disease that your friends and family were suffering from, if they had Ebola, if everybody was suddenly stricken with Ebola or some other disease, and you had the antidote, wouldn't you give it to them? Even if you knew that the shot was going to hurt like hell, even if you knew that the cure was going to cause them to writhe on the floor for 2 weeks, even if you knew that you were going to be humiliated, or you were fearful of administering the antidote, wouldn't you still do it? Wouldn't it be selfish not to do it? Wouldn't it be selfish not to reach out and touch them with this information and heal them, and touch them with that antidote and heal them? And aren't you a champion? Aren't you selfless when you make that sacrifice, when you summon up that courage, when you were at that dinner with your in-laws, when you're at that dinner with that hostile family member or 2 or 3? Aren't you being courageous when you and doing the right thing when you finally say to them, look, that position is anti-white. You really just need to hear that. And as I say, this can be delivered in different ways. It can, for people who are very sensitive, you can deliver it as I say, a throwaway comment, and just walk away from it. That will sow the seed. In fact, I will say this for folks who are concerned about their immediate family, people in the household. Sometimes I have parents ask me about their children. How do I introduce my children to this? You know, they're already infected to some degree, whatever degree that might be. And if you are parents out there and you have some of these questions, please write it in the chat. And please, if you super chat me, I'm almost 100% going to see it. If you tag me, that radically increases, and that's no white guilt, that radically increases the opportunity of me seeing it. If you just write a question, odds that I'm going to see it are slim. You know, if you just write Jason and you have a question, again, odds are pretty slim. You know, messages are going by. I try to get to everyone. And like I said, I had Julie Storm. She went back through, and we are all very thankful to her. Actually, if we could get some applauding emojis for her doing that, going back through, grabbing some of your statements and questions from the previous shows, I'd really appreciate the applauding emojis for her doing that for us. Going back and capturing these, I would like to speak with all of you. I value every single one of you, whether you tag me, don't tag me, give a super chat, don't give a super chat. You are all valuable members of this community, and I want to make sure to get to all of you because I want to communicate this information. I want to help you and empower you in your life. And it's not only going to be a matter of making you feel more confident and making you, putting you into a position where you can help those who are in your life, those you care about, and therefore help our people. But it is also going to work wonders. And this is a sort of a magical thing we will get into in the future. But when you begin to treat the actual mean pathogens that are in you, you begin to unleash your actual potential, your physical potential, your mental potential, your spiritual potential, your emotional potential. All of that is being throttled by the mean pathogens that are inside of you. And if you doubt it 1 degree, when we're done with this stream, go ahead and research the effects that stress and in fact, continual stress, not just short-lived stress, but continuous or continual stress has on your life. And you'll see that indeed you are crippled by these mean pathogens. Looks like we have a super chat. And well, let me quickly say to the parents about their children, and this can be for spouses as well. If you're trying to bring them around now, you have started going free and you're moving away from them, and you want to be able to communicate the information to them. And one of the ways that I teach in Go Free is to, for yourself as well as for friends and family, is to identify anti-whiteism in commercials. That's one of the easiest places to start because it's so abundant. It is so ubiquitous. How do you do that? Do not, when you see the toothpaste commercial And then right after it is the wedding rings commercial. And then right after that is the home security commercial. And in every case, it's a white person with a non-white of various races. You do not get into this long, in most cases, this is where you're trying to bring somebody around, especially children, around to a going free. Don't get into some long diatribe about how repulsive it is or how objectionable it is, or, that people are actually sitting down. It is truly repulsive to think about groups of people sitting down and actively choosing actors and actresses. That's what's really going on. Watch my video about, and I've been privy to this sort of thing. Watch my video about Murder on a Commercial. There are groups of people sitting around saying, we are going to pair a non-white with a non. That's not accidents. That's not by chance. They're not flipping a coin. They're doing it because they're anti-white, because it has a deleterious effect on our future, because the children from those unions are less white than the white parent that came before. So it is an infliction of harm. Instead, you can use what I was talking about earlier as the throwaway comment. You can just say, when you see that on the commercial, you can just say, that's anti-white. And if the spouse or the children ask, well, how is it anti-white? You can say what I just said, how it's deleterious, how it causes white erasure, and that they're simply not doing this to other groups around the world. These are anti-whites. But if you say it in this non-aggressive way, if you say that's anti-white and you move on, that enables people to hear it and then digest it, understand it, see it for what it's worth. They don't feel challenged. They don't feel like they have to defend themselves. They don't feel like they are somehow guilty if they don't take up the charge as urgently as you do. So that is a great way to handle it. So we have some super chats, and I don't want to miss any of these as I say. Looks like we have one more voice with $10 Canadian. Remember, brothers and sisters, self-care is self-respect, which boosts confidence, charisma, and conviction to win over prospects. Winning them is more valuable than defeating them. Absolutely. Absolutely. That is beautifully said. And I also want to say, when I said, example, to who was it who said, I've got these moved around on me on my Streamlabs. Who said what? I think it was Billahora, but I don't see it now, who said anti-whiteness, and then I addressed it. I am going to make these mistakes too in my speech. I'm not immune to this. I am certainly going to be further along going free than people who are just starting, but I am human. I'm going to make the exact same mistakes. And so we need to rely on each other to help each other, correcting each other's verbiage that we use and correcting each other's dialectics that we use. We have the inertia of a lifetime of infections working against us. And we have the inertia of the present, of the news and entertainment media, etc., working against us, of our friends and family working against us. So we are going to have to help each other. When I care about you all, I want you to win. So when I see you use verbiage that is not going to be successful for you, I'm going to point it out, because otherwise I would be demonstrating no care for you if I said nothing. If you were getting your hand too close to a machine that I knew would rip your fingers off, what kind of person would I say to not say, move your hand away from there? So that is how this is viewed. If I end up getting my hand too close to a machine that you see is going to rip my fingers off, you better say, move your hand away from there, or I'm not going to consider you a friend of mine. So we have to watch out for each other. We have to grow together as a community. So this is not when I grab somebody's word and I say, let's talk about that for a moment. This in no way is an attack on the person who used the word. By God, no. I'm going to make the exact same mistakes myself. And this is brilliantly said. We want to win over our brothers and sisters. We do not need to defeat them. That's not the goal. The goal is to win them over to white well-being, to give them the antidote. You have it. I'm sharing it with you. It works. We've done the trials. I've been working on it for a great many years. I've taken out the impurities, the things that didn't work. I've kept in and highlighted and emboldened the things that I have heard repeatedly do work. This is the antidote. Stick it in the shoulder of your friends and family, and let's begin growing this at a fire's pace. Okay, let's see who else we have here. Johnny Jones, super chatting with $20. Thank you very much. Good sir. We are winning info war. The obvious ramping up their agenda is proof. Indeed, exactly. And that we've talked about before, the fact that they continue to tighten the noose around our neck, this censorship noose, this what I refer to now as we not only have the shadow banning, but what I refer to as the glitch banning is being, and that's going to be the thing of the future, folks, that we're eventually going to have to move into other spheres altogether, because the glitch banning will become so awful, it'll be intolerable. That all is being ramped up to shut us down. And when we look back over the decades, this is not the first time this has happened. When we look back over the decades, as I've even been in this fight, we see how they have shut things down in the past. We've seen them drag out the sedition laws to shut things down in the past. We've seen them ramp up when we're having success. Why did those efforts fail and this one will succeed? The reason why is because this is an antidote that as soon as I give it to you, you can reproduce it and give it to someone else. They can take Jason out. They can take you out. But once it's spreading, they can't stop it. That's the beauty of this. So this isn't just reducible to a particular individual, reducible to a particular ideology, a particular document that they can then just go and arrest and censor and sue into oblivion with lawfare or slime or shame, or they can once this is out there, they can say anything they want about me. I mean, I have a tech specialist that I think I want to have on tap in the very near future that is showing me this technology that the anti-whites have that is now, I think it's nearly a decade old, and it has, in the public sphere, it's gotten to the point where it is almost perfectly real looking, where they can take video of your face. And certainly if it's in the public sphere, it's that good. It's further along in the government sphere, where they could take, if they have enough footage of you, your face, your movements, your own video, they can take all of this data, they can feed it into a computer, and then they can put your face looking perfectly on you in a video on someone else's body doing something horrible or something objectionable. So have no fear that in the future you're going to see people, you're going to see these sorts of claims. You're going to see that, oh, well, this person X in the white positive sphere, here he or she is doing this objectionable thing on video. And that is actually going to be one of these fake videos. If you have not seen one of these videos already, you will be stunned. I understand that they are being already used to great profit in pornography, because they're taking video footage from actors and actresses. They are then feeding that video footage into this software. And after so much time, the software is able to put the face of the actress on a woman participating in pornography who has a similar body or a nearly identical body as the actress, and it looks like the actress. Now, I don't know how well it looks. I don't watch these things, but apparently it looks very nearly perfect, and they surmise that in the future, very near future, it will look. So there is a profit motive for this as well, which means that it's going to ramp up fast. So all that is to say that what we're sharing here is valuable, because they could do anything they want to me once this info is out there. They could make up one of these videos. They could jail me. They could sue me into oblivion. They could do whatever they want at that point, assassinate me. They could do whatever they want. And it's too late. In the past, when you had the different militias, when you had the different documents, when you had the different preachers, when you had the different leading lights, the different thought leaders and the like, they could cut the head off the dog, as they say in the old Italian saying, and that was the end of the movement. Well, there's no cutting the head off of this scenario. There's no head to cut off. This is the ultimate distributed network. If you don't know anything about networks, centralized, decentralized, distributed, then just take my word for it. This is something that cannot be undone. This is something that will spread, and before the regime knows it, it'll be the people in those offices with them that they'll have to turn a wary eye on. Does that white general right there, has he been inoculated to mean pathogens? Is he going free? Does that Air Force general, does that admiral, does that CIA chief, who is it among us that has been healed by way of this ideology? That is where this power lies. All right. Very big thank you to Johnny Jones. Let's jump on to see. We have Antarctic Ice Queen super chatting with $9.99. Thank you very much for that super chat. Didn't write anything, but we are very grateful for the super chat. Let's see. We have, I know I missed a couple, so let me make sure I get some. While I'm looking for super chats, why don't you all tell me, do you have any specific scenarios? Do you have a family member who's anti-white? Do you have a coworker who's anti-white? Do you have a potential mate who is anti-white to one degree or another? Have you tried to talk with them about it? What has the result been? Are you afraid to talk about it? What do you think will happen? How can I help you get through that? And by helping you get through that, help everyone else who is listening. Oh, we have a great question from DL, and we will address that shortly. He asks, he or she says, what if they, meaning your interlocutor or your audience, says, I am, and I guess I am here would be anti-white, and I am here to take your land and your women. We will get to that. We have Spellcheck wrote, you should do a show about entrepreneur careers that we could start, since we will forever be second-class citizens in the corporate world moving forward. That's a fantastic idea. Please share your ideas with me, folks, because Jared and I, we will absolutely bring these ideas up, put them on a list, and employ them as themes for shows. All right, let's see. What else is there? Sue says that there's a great question here. Sue, could you copy and paste the question and please, and tag me again? Because I don't see. I see Jared George wrote, doesn't like the term Gentile. Yeah, I spoke about that to quite a bit of shock on the panel, on the show we were on Tutar with David Duke many months ago now. And I came out and said, I'm certainly not a Jew, but I'm definitely not a Gentile, because the Jews are not at the center of my universe. We are at the center of my universe. And that is a really powerful place to put yourself in a discussion with an anti-white. And think about that too when it comes to those of you, and it's a great many, regrettably, that will use this terminology that you're a Gentile, putting yourself in this like orbital sphere around the Jewish people and their story. That is repulsive. Put yourself at the center of our story. We are at the center of our story. Western kind, that's who we are. Anne E. writes, no white guilt is top quality truth. Thank you very much, Anne. I deeply appreciate that. Let's see what else we have here. Let's see. I already spoke to. Okay, we have. Let's see about the super chat. Okay. Was Noslin for $10 super chat. Looks like it showed up on my Streamlabs. By the way, did it show up on the super chat page? because I don't see it. That's curious. He writes $10. Thank you very much for that super chat. An effective tactic for now, but as we slide inevitably down into the demographic chasm, appealing to reason will only serve to validate the idea that we are the only race that cares about other races. Not exactly sure from what position you're making that comment. We need to know when we come in contact with a white person, and that's what this is about. And perhaps where your confusion might be is that you uh, you're not quite sure of why we bother to say anti-white, why we bother to call them anti-white. The reason why we use anti-white is there are many reasons, and many reasons why I came up with this and used it despite all of the headwinds that I had. For the discussion here, one of the main reasons is that it invalidates the concepts of racist and racism and forces the anti-white to reveal themselves as oppositional to our well-being, as our victimizers. So that does a couple things. That immediately clears things up for everyone. And we need a clear landscape in order to make logical decisions. So if it clears it up for those who are on the fence, and those who are on the fence, once it's clear for them, a great many of them are going to come to our side because they're going to say, well, this actually isn't about helping the crying brown babies. This is about just harming white people. And so I'm no longer going to side with them. That is the importance there. I can't, if you can't get that, then there's no helping you. The other important thing is that as we do slide into an environment that potentially, I mean, a lot of people speculate about an environment becoming much more physically hostile, government not being able to necessarily maintain order in the streets or that sort of thing. We're going to need to know where the line is drawn. And a very stark line is drawn between those who are and those who are not anti-white. That's the reality. This will live even if I don't live to see any of that. Those people who are standing, you know, if we get to the point where South Africa is today, and you have whites standing with rifles at the edges of roads to not allow certain vehicles to come into town or not, rest assured they're going to be referring to those potential people, or they're going to be speculating, are they anti-white? They're not going to be using some other verbiage. I mean, it's too straightforward and easy to use. So they're going to be using my dialectics and my verbiage, whether they want to or not. I mean, they're going to need an ideology, whether they wanted to use my ideology or ideas or not. And so it's going to end up just being the de facto reality for them as they fight to survive. So yes, it's vitally important as we move forward. So let's see, who did I miss here? Again, while I take a drink and I look at some of these, see who I missed super chat wise, jump on over to your Twitter, Gab, Facebook, Minds, whatever else you have, and let everybody know in your circles of influence that this conversation is ongoing. It's a Q&A, looking for questions, looking for comments, looking for pushback, looking for challenges, looking for testimony of successes. We want it all. And so please go ahead and do that right now as I look at this. We have Bodacious super chatting with $10. Thank you very much. Our diversity officer at work likes to accuse us of white privilege. I'm going to confront her about it. She is a good person, but brainwashed. I would say, Bodacious, it's really easy. I would just say to her, you know, this idea of white privilege is a superstition because you can't prove it. And it really is just anti-white. It's just really going to harm white people. So maybe you should think about it. If you find a way to prove white privilege, I'd be happy to hear it. But otherwise, it's just an anti-white superstition. Have a nice day, diversity officer, and walk away. Bill Ahura donating again with $5 through Super Chat. Thank you, good sir. He says, I don't see how whiteness is ugly. But on your suggestion, Jason, I'll try anyway. I'll try always to use anti-whiteism as you are so discerning. Well, no, thank you very much, Bill Ahura. Really, you do not want to. I don't want you to come to the situation where you have used anti-whiteness, and then some anti-white says, well, here is this professor, this anti-white professor, and this other one, and this other one, and this other one, and here's what they say whiteness is. And so therefore you are for whiteness. And then you are put in a hole where you have to try to dig your way out. No, I'm not actually for all those things. No, those people are lying. No, they're misrepresenting. You see how that argument becomes much more complicated. You don't stand a snowball's chance to win that discussion. So instead, just use anti-whiteism, and then they can't then reach for this appeal to authority, this fallacy, and say, oh no, well, this professor says that you're absolutely wrong and you're an imbecile, and where are your degrees? You know, this is the kind of argument that you'll get in with these people, and you don't need it. You can just win. Just go ahead and win with what I'm sharing here, and then come back and tell us about how well it went. Like Bodacious, I want to hear about how it goes with that diversity officer. In fact, I want to, Bodacious, when you say what I just advised that I would say in your situation, I want you to carefully watch the look on her face, and you're going to watch all of that smugness disappear. It happens every time on the faces of these anti-whites. The smugness just melts right off of their ugly faces. Very often is the case, but it just melts away suddenly. I had a conversation not too long ago on a platform. I can't remember off the top of my head which one it was. This was maybe a month ago. And it was a young woman, and she thought she was going to just give it to me right. She was going to say, Jason, you know, you're just this racist, and here are the reasons why. And I went after her with my verbiage. And by the end, all she could do, and this was just a couple back and forths of conversation, by the end, all she could do is just say, but I'm not anti-white. I'm just not. I'm not anti-white. She was doing everything she could to walk back from the position that she had shown up with, which was that she was morally superior and that I was somehow this wretched and individual and could be dehumanized. This, you all will feel great by winning at this. Just follow this procedure and you'll win. So let's see. All right, we saw that. We got the Ice Queen Healing Arts super chatting with 20 Danish Corona through super chats. For good or bad, ism always implies cult tendencies. I don't know exactly. Perhaps in your country, it is received a little different than it is across the English-speaking world. Cult tendencies. I mean, no. Just think about. I mean, we could seriously give like 100 examples of ism that would be impossible to apply to a cult. So perhaps, though, in your country that is the case. I would need to hear from more people from your country. Let's see. We got a bunch of more subscribers. I thank you all. Everyone who is subscribing now is new. Come to the cause of white well-being in our growing community. We have a splendid community here for you, and we are all here to help each other out. This is not about the hyper-individualism that you see in the individualist movements of various names. You know, conservatism not the least. So we are glad to have you here, and we will take you up. We will gather you up with welcoming arms. Thank you for being here. Thank you for subscribing. We got a great super chat from Quebec, super chatting with $125. Thank you so much for that, Quebec. Every single cent goes into the fuel tank that fires the pistons in the engine for white well-being. So thank you. Think of a drag car, a rail, or a funny car at the beginning of the drag race. and the thing is smoking and the fire is jumping out of the exhaust. That is what we're able to do when we receive such super chats. He writes, inspiring as always. It's harder than I expected to break out of the linguistic traps set by anti-whites. I couldn't have said it better myself. After a lifetime of being infected with these, through, well, we can say, I mean, it's always hyperbole to say countless, but we can say countless scenarios as far as our lives are concerned. You have seen it in movies and books and TV shows and commercials over and over. The repetition is endless. And remember, the deeper it's buried in your brain, the more it is operated by your subconscious mind, the more control it exercises over your behavior, your thoughts and behavior, and the more it seems as though it is part and parcel of who you are. That is what we're actually combating when we're combating anti-white mean pathogens with which we are infected. So Caitlin super chatting with $20 Canadian through super chat. Keep up the amazing work. Well, thank you so much for the super chat and the kind words. Thank you so much. DB Cooper, again, surviving with the parachuting out of the plane, super chatting with $5. Thank you so much. I can't wait to start spreading the message of white well-being via flyers among, what is it? Among other ways. Yes. Okay. Indeed. Well, thank you so much for that. We are going to set up a campaign in the future. It's going to be a fabulous thing. We are going to break through to the mainstream in a way that we hope and anticipate will have heretofore not been as successful. And we will roll that out when the time comes. It's very exciting, but we're going to reach millions of white people. Things will change quite rapidly as the inoculation reaches more and more, as the antidote reaches more and more people. So we have Johnny Jones super chatting with $20. Thank you so much. Any suggestions on how to deal with extended family members? Hold on, the whole screen just moved. Family members that bring race mixing into the family dynamic. This can be obviously a complicated scenario, Johnny, and a lot of people deal with this. And whether it's just not necessarily marriages, but dating, we see people will bring these, or just friends of the opposite sex. We see that they'll bring them to family functions. The bottom line is that our position is a position of love. Remember that at all times and in all ways, when we are sharing our message is a message of love. It's a love for our people. It's a love for our children. It's a love for our destiny. So as a message of love, if someone finds it offensive, if someone becomes angry that you care about the well-being of white children, for example, that is their problem. They have an issue. Make sure that it is plainly evident that it is, if this non-white person comes into the home, comes into the family, and they have a problem with protecting white children, protecting or serving white well-being, make sure that your conversations make clear that it is not you who is opposing the well-being of their particular group, but them who is opposing the well-being of your group. Also, make sure that, and this is another thing, because very often people will say things for public consumption that they don't actually feel. So a non-white who is anti-white might say, I just think everybody should mix together. Well, you will have heard or had conversations with them, because this unlikely will take place in the very first conversation or very first meeting, where they stood up for something non-white. This is in all of these cases that I've discussed with people. There has been this scenario where they have said, well, we all know that the police are extra mean to this particular non-white group or that particular non-white group. And you can bring that up. You can say, look, you sided with this non-white group at that point, and now you are saying that whites shouldn't care about each other. So it's very easy to demonstrate, that they are anti-white if they are, by way of these contrasts. Keep it friendly. You are the good guy. You are on the moral high ground. You don't wish ill to their people. You wish nothing but love and good to your people. And now here's what I also say. That non-white person might come into your home and already be inclined to support white well-being. It's rare. It might be as rare as hen's teeth, but it could still be the case. It can also be the case that because you are filled with love, because your motivation is love, that the non-white date or friend or family member now or what have you decides to adopt your position because they see no threat. So when it comes to this sort of thing, it is important how you approach it and from what position you're approaching it. If you're approaching it from a position of love for our people and no harm to any other group, and I would say attempt to recruit the non-white person in front of your family members. Recruit them to the cause of white well-being. We would like to say to them, there's so many white people who care about non-white groups all around the world. There are white people who right now are donating time, donating money, donating their energy, donating their intelligence to ensuring that white people are doing well, that they're not suffering and all. I would like to see you do the same for white people. There are suffering white people, and you don't even have to get into the 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 suffering that we experience by way of, say, diversity quotas. You can get into that. For every, and this is a great phrase that you all can use, for every diversity hire, there has to be a diversity fire. Whether that's a white person who is getting fired from the job that they had or a white person who never got hired as a result. There aren't limited resources in companies. So when they have to have a diversity hire, there is always a diversity fire. There's always a white person who is suffering as a result of that anti-white program. You can talk instead about all of the suffering poor whites in Southern California now, in the 10 cities, in the Appalachian Mountains. There are suffering and poor whites all over the world, and far more poor whites in this country than any particular poor non-white category. And so if this non-white in your family or visiting doesn't want to take up that cause, everyone in the family will see that and just remain firm and positive. And that's how it is. This really, and I say in my notes that I have here a little later on that, and I'm glad we're getting so many questions, but I will jump through these, that it is a battle of the wills. You have to be a rock. You're going nowhere. Your position is insurmountable, and you are going to hold that position no matter what. Remember that. Because if you don't, what's going to end up happening is you are going to surrender, and the anti-white person is going to be thinking to him or herself, my God, thank God he or she didn't use that giant sword that of anti-whiteism that he or she has. Thank God that he or she is so dumb or so frightened that he or she didn't use it on me because it would have defeated me. That's what they're going to be thinking. So let's get back to this quickly. Looks like Cheeky Elf donated $10 through Super Chat. I'm a bit dim on the anti-white accusation tactic. I guess dim means I don't like it. How does one throw it at an anti-white after being called racist without first stooping to the I'm not a racist angle? You absolutely do not say you're not a racist. If an anti-white says to you, you're a racist, I've had it especially online, 1,000 times, if once. Of course, that's hyperbole, but it's been so many times it's unbelievable. If they say you're just a racist, I just write back, well, you're just an anti-white. Only anti-whites use that anti-white word, and so you've just proven that you're anti-white. I guarantee you, use it, Cheeky Elf. Use it today. Use it tomorrow. The next time we're doing a Go Free stream, pop up and let us know how it went. What did people think? What did they say in response? You're not going to have a response that's wildly different from the ones I'll discuss here, and that actually covers the full spectrum. But from the customary ones, most likely in most cases, you're going to have somebody that is going to try to defend themselves and say, "Oh no, I'm not. You're the bad one. You're the bad guy." So don't fall, just throw anti-white in their face. Put them on the defensive. Put the field of debate, of conversation, in the window frame in which you want it to be discussed. And again, to what I just said a moment ago, it's a matter of will. You are going to put it there and you're going to keep it there and you're not budging ever. So let's see here. The joint ritual, super chatting with $5 through super chat. Dude, your suggestions are really practical and simple. Please keep up the good work. Thank you very much for those that very kind compliment and the super chat. And thank you all for the super chats you're giving and to the questions. And I'm going to get back over after I get through the super chats and see what other questions we have. And certainly for those who have tagged me, Billahora super chatting with $5 again. Thank you very much, good sir. Jason. Not with the government, but between races. Don't you think there could be a time when non-whites start a race war against whites? It's a bit off the subject, but I can thank you for the question nonetheless, Billahora. Hasn't that already been going on? I mean, don't you call the 35 or whatever it is, 1,000 rapes of white women a year by non-white males? Isn't that already race war? I mean, these crimes that are, and let me just ask you this. Is not every single crime committed by a non-white person against a white person, is not every single one a hate crime? Let me see if there are any answers to that, and then I'll get back to the final. Oh, got a quick question. Somebody tagged me, and it says, wait a second about the Gentile thing. Are you a Christian? Whether you are Christian or not, and this is, where did the chat go? You have to love technology. You have to love technology. Okay. I think that was the totality of the question. Whether or not you are a Christian, do not put yourself in the periphery of the Jewish story. Put yourself in the center of our story. Do not allow yourself to be a peripheral, ancillary entity in someone else's story, whether or not you're Christian. So come to grips with that however way you must. Now, as far as me being a Christian, I attended church twice a week as a young man. I went to numerous denominations. And the reason why I went from one denomination to the next, attending church with different friends and their families, was because every single church I went to preached anti-white ideology as the gospel of God. So everywhere I went, racism was a sin. Everywhere I went, race desecrating was a blessing that would help, that would make God happy. Now, this might very well be extremely different from what you experienced at church. This is what I experienced outside of the nation's capital, after church, after church, after church. And finally, as I tell the story in Born Guilty, and you can find the totality of it there and all of the details of it there, the causation of it there. I explain it in much more detail, and it's a very sad story. As a matter of fact, I had to walk away from attending church. But I have said since then, and I will continue to say, that if Jesus, God, asks me to return to the church, I'm certainly not going to disobey a deity who appears and asks me to return to the church. But other than that, they taught the anti-white narrative. And I will tell you, one of the final things, I will add this, one of the final straws for me was that at the church I was at, they were providing food, clothing, and occasionally shelter, toys, etc., for illegal immigrants from south of the border, Mexicans, El Salvadorians, Ecuador, all of this other business. However, when we had an opportunity to give legal Russian immigrants aid, in other words, white people who were equally impoverished the church suddenly didn't have the resources. So that is the kind of thing that I felt was too despicable to tolerate anymore. All right, so let me jump back to these, and then I'll try to find those other questions. I apologize if you tagged me in a question and it disappeared. If you could, again, reach out. More people are getting off work. More people are getting home. They're in their transit for going home. They are popping out their phones and putting in their earbuds. So tweet, gab, prop it up on Facebook, prop it up on Minds. Let these people know who are now getting free from their slavery of laissez-faire capitalism and are either reaching home or on their way home, that the stream is going on and that there is information here to empower them. I'm not another guy who's just going to complain about the news. I'm not another guy who is just going to give you statistics. I'm not another guy who is just telling you, well, here's some sort of generalized a diagnosis of the situation, and here is a very generalized prognosis and some suggestions. And don't you think that sounds so smart? Kind of a guy. I couldn't care less about that. I couldn't care less if you think I'm the dumbest guy, if you think I'm the brightest guy, if you think I'm the ugliest guy, if you think I'm the best looking guy. None of that matters. What matters is that you receive the antidote and that you are empowered thereby, and thereby able to share it with your friends and family. That's what matters. So let's see. All right. Okay, so we have Healing Arts back again with 100 Danish krona in the super chat. Thank you very much. I don't exactly know how much that converts to in dollars. I think is krona, and perhaps somebody can write this in the chat. Is that like that's not like a full, is that a full, like a full unit of currency, like a $1 bill that's traded, and then the cost of things is so much lower in that country? Or is that the equivalent of like a quarter of a full unit of currency? So I just don't know. It would just be for my interest. He says, a meaning implied in ism is not a national thing, it's logic, a seed of accusation. Cult risk and tendency, not cult necessarily, can be used as an accusation implicitly. Avoid it for us, not them. Okay, yes, right. I see what you're saying. So yes, he's saying go ahead and use it for the opposition. Very good. Healing Arts, absolutely. It is cult-like, or their behavior rather is cult-like. So if ism works to imply cultish behavior, then it absolutely applies. So that's brilliant. Thank you. That's why so many times I've reached out to this great community that we have growing here, rapidly growing, by the way, especially relative to the other communities. And that is that we have brilliant people here. We have smart thinking people who are not just being led around by the nose by the regime, and they're able to think for themselves. And this is a brilliant example of that. So thank you very much. Well said. Very well said. Yeah, and in fact, when I talk about Prometheans, collectively, I refer to us as the Prometheum. And you can find more about that in my book, Going Free, specifically in the book titled Prometheus Rising, and a little kernel of information for the future that many will find exciting. I've already shared, they found very exciting, is that I am writing future stories that take place within the universe created by Prometheus Rising. They're going to be a little less lyrical, a little easier to read, but they are going to serve several purposes, and as well, obviously, as entertainment. But it'll be an exciting thing when we're able to roll those out. So thank you very much for that, Healing Arts. Let me see. Who else did we have? James super chatting with $1.99 through super chat. I can't see the agent. I can't not see the agent from the. I see. I can't not see the agent, saying that I look like Agent Smith. I've had this. You look like Agent Smith, or you look like what is the other guy, Neo? I've had that several times. In fact, I'll tell you a funny story, and then we'll get to the super chat from, who is that? Kesdotic one We'll get to that one next. Where I was, this was a few years ago, when I was still going to Starbucks, and I was walking. I was in a suit. I had my trench coat on, and black trench coat, and I was walking toward a Starbucks through a parking lot. And there was the Starbucks had a number of large windows. That's what I was walking toward. And in the middle of this parking lot, just milling about, nothing to eat there, was this this I would say maybe 15 crows. It was a very large number. It was roughly 15, and I was just going to walk through them. So as I got within a couple steps of them, and now me and the crows are about 10 or 15 yards from these windows, the crows all took off and flew away from me toward this window, and then branched out, flying up above the building like this. And of course, I had my suit on, I had my trench coat on, I had my glasses on. And when I walked in, the Starbucks employees said that it was like a scene right out of the Matrix movie. I couldn't stop laughing because of the way that these crows had behaved. But I guess for them, perhaps it was a very recent film. It's actually quite an old film now, I think. But maybe they had all gotten together for a coffee night and watched it. So the super chat I just mentioned, $5. Thank you so much. I just went on a company trip and spent most of my time talking with strangers and just spreading awareness in a very positive way. Well done. Thank you so much for that, and for the super chat. Kazdodic one, that's splendid. What we have to do, if you are around strangers, there's nothing to be concerned about when it comes to sharing a little bit of truth with them. I do it. I've talked about it before. If you're a man and you're on a street corner with another man, and he is a manly man, if you will, as well, you can just craft a statement that challenges his masculinity, and then move on. As men, we really should be fighting against all this anti-white ideology. Walk away. As men, we really should be fighting against all of these anti-white comments we see in the news, and then walk away. That will plant a seed that will sprout a sequoia, I promise. Do those kinds of things every time you get an opportunity. This is how we are going to grow this community. While everybody else are talking if they're talking about tactics at all, if they're talking about bringing people at all, or people doing things at all, it's about turtling up. We don't have the numbers to turtle up. We need to win people. And not only that, just morally, we have to save our people, for God's sake. I mean, don't you? I'm sure you people, as well as I, feel the pain of our suffering. I don't need to personally be raped to feel the pain, the rape that one of our women or one of our young boys, especially our little boys, experiences, because we are in this anti-white context. I don't have to actually have that happen to me to know that pain, and to get righteously angry because of it, and to want to save our people from it, and to make amends for the rapes that have happened, for the murders that have happened, for the beatings that have happened. I don't have to actually be that person to do the right thing, for God's sake. All right, let's move on. Let's see. Ganja Blob super chatting with £5. Thank you very much. I think anti-English would work better in England. It makes them confront that English is a nationality, ethnicity, not a piece of paper. Well, that's also a discussion that you have to have. And this is something that is, I think prudent to address at some point. We'll get into a whole international application, because largely, think about the application of other words from the English language in other countries, or from American English to other countries. And we see that with adamant use, by having a strong will, that those terms are adopted by these other countries. And I can't see why that wouldn't work for us. Now, certainly, you have a measure your scenario based on the person you're speaking with. or two. So keep that in mind when you have those conversations. But anti-English, I know, unfortunately, from English people I've spoken with, uh, that English is now anybody who has a English identifying papers. So, you then have to get into this discussion. Well, no, really, they're not really English. They're just the paper English. They're just a legal fiction. And then you see how this unravels. You want to win. You want to have that. You want to hammer it with a term and then move away from it. You don't want to get into this spiraling of your definition of this, their definition of that, because you lose then. And if you have an audience, you lose the audience. And we'll talk about that in a second. We got so many great questions, so many great super chats. Machiavellius sucks. Super chatting $1.99 says white women are lovely. I couldn't agree more, my good man. I couldn't agree more. We have a couple more subscribers. That's fantastic. We're getting up to nearly 400 watching live. This is fantastic. You guys are doing the right thing by reaching out to your circles of influence and bringing more in. You know that we're facing the shadow banning because that we have the antidote. That is why we face the shadow banning. That's why when I make videos like this, I don't instantly have 30,000+ subscribers, because I have an antidote. That's why. And the anti-whites know it better than anyone else. Okay, we have England 14 asking the question, how can you win against someone who is openly anti-white and proud? Calling them anti-white wouldn't work. We will talk about that in just a second, my good friend. Indeed, jumping ahead. Brilliant questions from these folks. All right, let's move down. Brandon writes, how to order an autographed book of Born Guilty. Very easy. You go to knowwhyguilt.org, knowwhyguilt.org. You will find there a contact me button. And when you click that, you write a message to me. You tell me who you are, that you would like an autographed copy of Born Guilty, and I will write back to you as promptly as I can, and I will tell you exactly how to acquire one. I send them out all the time. It is an easy process. Healing Arts, I guess this is this the same as the super chat? Yes, it is. Okay, very good. I'd like to thank Syrup for his intrepid work as well as we work through this. We're coming up toward the end here. I do want to get into these. The notes that I have are important because it's going to address a lot of questions that you all might have or have had or will have. So let's see what other questions we might have. If you wrote a question in which you tagged me and it jumped up my screen, it disappeared or whatever, if you could please write it again or just copy and paste it down, tag me again, I'll get to it. I see here, looks like my good friend Jared George. Oh, I see Philosophy Cat. If you go back to the beginning of the stream with Philosophy Cat, you'll see I'm thanking you for this idea that you had of doing a video and then a Q&A. Thank you for being here. Looks like both Jared George, the worldly man that he is, and also Riding the Tiger, both telling me that dim means it's a Britishism for not smart, not informed. That seems totally legitimate. Also, folks, when it comes to having Patrick or rather Syrup or any of our moderators reach out to you and maybe ask you to watch your speech or something of this nature, keep in mind that we have to keep the channel safe. Syrup doesn't dislike any of you. He is just doing his job of keeping us safe on this platform and also ensuring that the chat is productive rather than destructive. We want you all to grow by way of these conversations rather than shrink. We also don't want to turn away people who are new to the channel by a bunch of speech that is perhaps hostile or otherwise contumacious. So let's see here. We have America Only super chatting with $5. Have you read The Total Money Makeover? It's a way to help our people financially. We need money to help our people as well. It helps self-improvement. I haven't read it, but I will have to pick it up, and we will see about sharing those ideas if especially if the book isn't cheap. I would like to just, you know how they do with most of these self-help books, folks. If you don't, then I will simply tell you that there is about 20 pages worth of valuable information, and then 180 more pages of filler so that they can justify the price. So it's easy. You know, we can find out what's actually valuable there. We can share it with you, and you won't have to waste your time and money. Jilly Storm has a question about, did you see my concern about my son using anti-white in school? I did not see that, if you asked it before. I also wrote, before I answer that, I see someone speaking to the Danish krona. I see it says that $1 US is, looks like rounding up 9 of the krona. So it's almost like a dime, is what we're saying in US currency. But does it function like a dime? In other words, is what can you really buy with a dime or a krona's worth of currency? I mean, can you buy a gallon of milk with it? That's what I'm curious about. But thank you for that information. Now, when it comes to Jilly Storm's question, that's a really important question because there are a lot of moms out there, divorced and married, who have children, and they're saying anti-white in the home. And maybe you have a spouse who is concerned about this. Maybe you're concerned about the child going to school and saying, hey, that's anti-white. What could happen by that? I can tell you what I would do if I were a father. Pardon me. And that is that I would be saying anti-white in front of my child. If my child were at school, I don't know if I would have children going to school, but if they, might be all homeschooled up until the point where we wouldn't be able to facilitate that any further. But if the child goes to school and says anti-white, so there are a couple ifs here. If the child says that something is anti-white in school, let me see, Jilly Storm just wrote again, spouse warning me that we better not get called into principal's office if son says anti-white in school. He won't share my argument. What will I say to principal? Okay, so here's the thing. First, and this is for all the moms and dads out there, first of all, if your child says anti-white in school, you can tell your child, depending upon the child's age, you can instruct them that the truth about the world, and this is a big disagreement as well in the white positive sphere. You absolutely must raise your children with the truth about what's going on to our people, with the truth about what's taking place around the world. Do not hide it from them so that they can make their own decisions, come to their own conclusions. That is a poison that we have been taught by the anti-whites. For the obvious reason. Can anybody think of a reason? I mean, surely if you were in the midst of a population that you hated, wouldn't it be great to convince them to don't pass on any of your ways? Don't tell them about the things in the world that will harm them. Let us tell them about it all. That is why white people have been taught that. And that's why we now have this idiotic notion of whatever you do, don't tell your children about the ways of the world. No, I think you tell them about the ways of the world. And depending on their age, you can instruct them that at a particular school, say your child goes to, and that's why this is always context dependent. Say your child is in a heavily non-white school and it's very violent. Well, first of all, I would do my best to get my child out of that school, but I would also tell the child, look, don't, until we can get you out of there, don't speak up. You're going to get jumped by a dozen non-whites. You'll get a broken eye orbit. You'll get teeth knocked out. They're not going to have pity on you. In fact, adult non-whites might even let the mauling continue for a bit before they intervene. So there's a lot of different contexts. If the child says that, if a principal calls you in, or if a vice principal, somebody calls you in, administrator calls you in, you can merely say to this principal, was the thing that my son or daughter talked about, was it anti-white? Because if it's anti-white, then it's totally legitimate for my son or daughter to say that's anti-white. I mean, would you oppose something that is, or would it be okay for a Jewish child to say that something is anti-Semitic if it's anti-Semitic? Of course, the principal would say, well, yeah, sure, that would be fine. Would it be fine for a black child to say that something's anti-black if something is anti-black? Well, of course, that would be fine. Well, then it's fine if my white child says that something is anti-white if it is anti-white. So if again, it's context. In most cases, what my experience has been is that the interlocutor, the person you're speaking with, backs down at that point. White people hate white people who are not vehemently anti-white. They hate that feeling of hypocrisy, and so they'll turn a blind eye. They'll just look away in the future. Now, if the person is vehemently anti-white, they're going to have it at you. I mean, they're going to come after you, and I would get my child out of that school. And you have to make hard decisions for the welfare of your children. For God's sakes, put them first. Don't say you like this house so much, or you like this yard so much, or you like that house so much. Move and get your children someplace safe. Do the right thing. Don't be selfish. And so that's what I would say. I mean, certainly my children would and or will be saying anti-white at school. We have Healing Arts with a super chat. Again, another 20 Danish krona. Biospirit, pro-anti game changer. Thanks all. Exactly. It absolutely is a game changer. It will change everything. You will be the winner in these conversations. And when you all go out and you're the winner, others will see you win in those conversations, and they will imitate you. And before you know it, this will spread, just like they talk about disease pandemics. It's just like, showing up, where they talk about like a person with a specific disease showing up at an airport. And they, if they show up at an airport as opposed to, say, like the local sandwich shop, then whatever it is that they have goes everywhere, right? So it's the same sort of thing. Let me see. Amber Yates says, you should have lots of little yours, Chase. Thank you. I would like to have lots of little minds. They would be reared to be heroic fighters for the cause of white well-being. I can guarantee you that. Let's see. Okay, we have some feedback on the Corona, actually, just for my interest. It says it's basically nothing. 9 krona. Maybe buy one cheap loaf of bread. So that's interesting then, that's the... Oh, wait, you could buy a loaf of bread. Not milk. Okay, that's interesting. All right, well, that provides me just a little bit more context for the Danish krona. Thank you for that piece of information. Let's do this, folks. Let's get another big shout out to your circles of influence, and let's jump through these objections that you are going to hear. The 4 objections, the 4 circumstances that you could hear when you use anti-white. We'll share with you those now. We have Bully Hunter. Well, asking me to reiterate the strategy. Let's go back to the beginning of the video. Just kidding. Actually, Billy, we're going to go over the kinds of responses that you're going to receive when you say anti-white right now. So mark this place on the video when you want to come back, how long we have been in here, and you'll be able to go back and watch again if you need a refresher. And we all will need a refresher. As I said again, I am just as fallible, if not more so, than all or most of you. And so I ask of you all, as my good friends, to help keep me on track when I go wrong, when I drop the ball, and I will do that for you to the best of my ability. That's what friends do for each other. Even when the criticism or the suggestion might be a little painful, we have to humble ourselves, because our objective is to be the best that we can be. Our objective is to free the great Western spirit within us and thereby achieve our true physical, mental, and spiritual potentials. You have no idea how bright you can be. You have no idea how spiritual you can be, how in tune you can be with our world, with our universe, with each other. You have no idea, because it has all been slimed. It has all been covered in the tar of white guilting. It has all been covered in the tar of white noir and meme pathogens and the anti-white narrative that continues each and every day for all of us. You have no idea how great you can be, but we're going to get there. So to start, we have ready to snap, super chatting $5, writing, I just want to say thank you for all you do. Thank you. I appreciate that, you sharing that sentiment. That is a wonderful thing. It is every bit, and I say this speaking for Jared, speaking for Kat, speaking for all of the content producers. Please, Poseidon too, reach out to him next time he is on the air, and Spartan Warrior Queen, thank them as well. Every good word is beyond beneficial to us. We need those good words because we face a lot from the anti-whites, and I've become a nerd to them, but some of the others maybe not so much so. But always hearing a good word is welcome, and appreciate that. Let me pour myself a little bit more water, and we are going to jump into the kinds of objections you will face when you use anti-white. Seeing a lot of subs. We're reaching people, folks. We're making it happen. People are coming to the truth. People are maturing socio-politically, coming to white well-being. How exciting is this? How is that? Let me tell you something. You know, we had the question earlier, why don't I have 1 million subs? And I mentioned it several times now in this stream. It's because I'm being shadow banned. The shadow banning is horrible. Let me tell you this. In the span of just 2 days, over this conversation I had relative to propertarianism last week, I received well over 100 messages. Now, when I talk to other content producers of supportive messages, pardon me, when I talk to other content producers, that is not the norm. Hundreds of messages in days, and I receive normally that many over the span of maybe 4 days or 5. Hundreds of messages of support, hundreds of messages of people saying that I've been unsubscribed. I've been I looked at my Twitter the other day, and I'm no longer following you. They've unfollowed me somehow. I've looked at, and just all of this shenanigans, all of this chicanery by the anti-whites to stop us and to bring us down. That is why you have to help me spread this. That is why you have to help me make this go supernova across the globe, because they know, the anti-whites know how powerful it is. When you have nothing great to share, it's easy to get many thousands of subs overnight. When you have something that can really harm the actual superstructure, the actual anti-white superstructure, the hammer comes down, all stops come out. And trust me, there's going to be a point in the future where things are going to get uglier for me, especially as this does reach out to millions of people because of the power that it has. And so when that day comes, I'm going to be relying upon you all to continue this message. America only super chats with $5. When will you create an audiobook? I work 2 jobs, so I don't have time to sit down and read your book. It would make it easy to listen as I work. I am going to be creating an audio book. Initially, audio versions are going to come out probably of Crucible and Prometheus Rising before the totality of Born Guilty. But a audiobook from Born Guilty is planned for the future. Thank you very much for the super chat and the question. Really quickly, I will. There's HB 2014, our good friend. And I will repeat, as I see HB here, that his brilliant addition to what we are doing that he had the other day is that we should all be following each other. And I'll repeat that again and again. We should all be following each other on all of these different platforms so that we can stay abreast. We can magnify the things that we share, and in an attempt to try to overcome the shadow banning and the algorithms. They can't shadow ban each and every one of us. They don't know who is who. So you might be able to share things and even grow faster than me as a consequence until they find out that you are sharing that material. So he says only 128 more subscribers to reach 14,000. Well, let's get there, folks. Let's get those messages out there. I see Be Soupful, another great member of the community. No White Guilt, I liked your tutor video and went back to watch the rest, and my like was gone. Indeed. This is so omnipresent that it is unbelievable. I have heard other content producers complain about the difficulties that they have had, and I wish I didn't have this title of the most shadow banned and glitch banned content producer, but it definitely seems like I am the holder of that title. I would rather it, obviously, rather it be someone else. I would rather have flown under their radar, but somebody or anti-white, some number of them have determined that I am, and this message, rather than me personally, is the real threat, and that they have to shut it down. So that's another thing. When you do subscribe or follow me on Twitter, check back often to make sure that you are still subscribed. Check back often to make sure that you are still receiving the alerts. You know, click that alert bell. Check back often to make sure that you are still following me on Twitter or even Gab. Make sure that you're still following me there. We have no idea how deep the anti-white reach goes. So stay abreast of that, if you will, folks. It's very important. Looks like Philosophy Cat's going to jump out. We'll see you again a little bit later. I know you have work to do at the moment. So let's jump into this answers to the responses you'll have to using anti-white. They're always going to be context dependent. That's going to be the first thing I have to say. The first thing that you have to consider is what when you use anti-white. I see Laura. Good seeing you, Laura, in the chat there. Let me see. Make sure I didn't miss anybody on Streamlabs. Okay, I don't think. Nope. It looks like at least everybody that Streamlabs has shown me, unless it is having an error. I didn't miss anybody. Okay, so what do you think? We're going to jump into this quickly. What do you think is the first thing that you have to consider when you use anti-white in a conversation? Any ideas? Does anybody have a suggestion? Oh, well, there's Arya Satya. I see. Haven't seen you in a while. Good to see you. Fortnite is are you racist? Is that the thing that you're? Is that an answer to my question? What is the first thing you have to consider when you use anti-white on a person? Thank you very much for that comment, Billahora. The first thing you have to consider when you use anti-white on a person is whether or not they can be converted, whether or not they're going to be receptive to the message of being helped. And this holds true for white as well as non-white. So is the white person that you're going to use anti-white on, are they receptive to the charge of or the ideology of white well-being? Is the non-white person that you're talking to, are they receptive to the ideology of white well-being? Because whether or not they are receptive is going to make all the difference, is it not? The next thing that you have to consider, and I'll put it out to you, whether Jennifer says you have to consider whether or not they'll slug you. That's fantastic. Yeah, I guess that's something you have to consider, whether or not they're actually going to punch you. when you use anti-white on them. The next thing you have to consider. No, it's Syrup. Are you speaking to that? Whether or not that's right or wrong, or something else in the chat, right or wrong, whether or not they will hit you. Certainly, if you are in a hostile environment where you could be physically attacked. I mean, obviously, I'm talking about all of this is context dependent. Pardon me. You have to take the context into consideration. If you are, say, like at one of these events last year and the year before, where Antifa are surrounding people and the police are not going to protect you and they're going to hit you over the head with a bike lock and get away with it because the regime is anti-white, just get out of that situation. Don't have a conversation with those people. And that goes to something we'll be talking about in just a moment. But obviously in those situations, you want to get away from the those who will physically attack you. So that's actually a great point, Jennifer, whether or not they'll hit you. The second thing you have to consider when you're going to call somebody an anti-white is the audience. Is there an audience right then? Will there be an audience to that conversation in the future? So you say you're having this conversation online. The conversation is going to persist there for who knows how long. Many other people will read that conversation. You have to consider whether or not there's going to be an audience of that conversation. That's another very important consideration. And so now, having said those two things, we're going to get into the sorts of rebuttals that our good friend Daryl mentioned: the denial, embracing the term, sarcasm, or to educate. So first we're going to jump into is denial. If the person that you call an anti-white denies that they are anti-white, that means that you have won. Does that make sense? Does everybody know why that it means that you have won the conversation? It means that you have won because they are now on your field. They are now in your context. They are discussing the matter by your rules. It's no longer in the rules of the anti-whites. It's no longer within their window of debate. Okay, so that's why you've already won the debate. As soon as they deny being anti-white, you have won the debate. The next thing is that it means is that to one degree or another, they are receptive to the argument for white well-being. And it could be a tiny bit, and it could be a great bit. In the moment, it's almost assuredly going to be a very little bit of change will be able to take place. In the long run, it can be a big change. So you have to craft your arguments and you have to craft your tone so that it is built to convert this person from being anti-white to serving white well-being. Does that make sense? So does anybody have an example? Like if you're talking to a friend, you're very welcome, Jilly Storm, for that. Looks like we have a super chat over on Streamlabs. Putang Slayer super chatted with $2 over on Streamlabs. Many on our side say racism is a meaningless anti-white slur. But one time I attended a football match where the audience were taunting a black player and with mockery noises and throwing bananas at him. Is the term valid to describe situations like that? Is what term valid? The term racism valid? Is that what you're asking? The concept racist and racism is a tool of white oppression. It is never valid. If those people were taunting a person and mocking a person, then it is those things. We can say we already say that taunting is bad. There's racial consciousness. Great to see you, brother. We already say that taunting is bad, that mocking is bad. Do not use a term of white oppression, because by using it, you validate it. It is an anti-white slur. Never say the word racist. Never say racism. We see no such Prince says no such thing as racism, homophobism, lesbianism, just good and evil, right and wrong. Well, sort of, but it's point of view based, and that's what we have to keep in mind. There isn't an objective good and evil that is above all things. That has been what we've been submitting ourselves to, and is a big reason why we are in this bad place. I'm just being stupid. That is Jesse Lee P. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. Racial consciousness. Yes, good evening. Racial consciousness. Are you still on Twitter? If so, go ahead and tweet that this stream is taking place, so that we can bring more people in for the actual substantive element of it. I guess all of it was substance, but the notes that I wanted to cover. So back to the notes briefly before we see if there are any more comments. And that is, we have here, if someone denies being anti-white, they are receptive to your argument of white well-being. Now, if they start off quite hostile, you can be a little bit more aggressive. If they start off and they're kind of wishy-washy, they're not hardcore, maybe they're just virtue signaling, take it a little bit easier on them. When you say that they're anti-white and they deny that they're anti-white, then what you do, and this is where it comes, you either go like a little bit more aggressive or a little bit more easy on them, is you point out the behaviors and ideas that they're sharing that are anti-white and are therefore the reason you called them anti-white. Does that make sense? So if somebody says, well, it's good to bring all of these other groups into the country because XYZ, we should keep the borders open, you say, and they're maybe passive about it, they're just repeating what they heard on the news. You say, well, actually, that's pretty anti-white. That's an anti-white position. And they say, well, no, I'm not anti-white, though. And you could say, well, if you hold an anti-white position, I think that makes you anti-white, and then maybe a little laugh or something. And then you say, well, it's anti-white. Your position's anti-white because, and then maybe you share a couple of reasons and you take it easy. If you have somebody that's being a little bit more aggressive, like I was describing the young lady earlier who came in and is just like, you're a racist. And I just came back with, you're anti-white. And I aggressively went at her with, only anti-whites use this term. And so you identify yourself as anti-white. You're too much of a coward to say the same of non-white groups. Would you say the same of blacks? Would you say the same of Jews? Remember, hypocrisy for a white person who is not viscerally anti-white is something that's very uncomfortable, and they'll want to back away from that position. Remember, again, the whole time you're keeping in the back of your mind, is there going to be an audience for this conversation? Is there an audience right now? Are other people listening? Is it a group of people standing around? Is it in a chat like this, live chat? Is there going to be an audience in the future? Is this on a thread and people are going to read it in the coming weeks and months, years? If so, if this is not a private conversation, you want to craft your responses in part, and it can be in large part, depending on the person you're conversating with, to those readers, to those listeners. Does that make sense? You want to keep in mind that you want to win them over to white well-being. This person now that you're having this discussion with is a foil. You want to use them to get the message of white well-being across, to get the message of anti-white across to the readers. Does that make sense? I need you all to be empowered with this information. I need you to own it, to learn it and own it and apply it everywhere you go. If there will be an audience, you craft your conversation specifically to sell white well-being, using that person that you're speaking with as a foil, to sell white well-being, to teach about anti-whiteism to that audience. Because there are going to be far more people. Thank you very much for that, Prince. Yes, if you understand, press 1. If this makes sense to you, press 1. There are going to be far more people in that audience, if there is going to be an audience, than that audience of 1 that you're talking to. So you want to craft your conversation to those people largely. Okay, good. Good to see you. And there's White Student, absolutely. And there's Seaver. Great seeing so many good people in the chat. Fantastic. I see M Bax in there as well. Phoenix Fire, Misty, a lot of so many great people. You are the people who are going to be. This is the, these are like the 13, if you will. We are going to take this message out to the masses, and we are going to be the ones, or I guess I should say the 14, right? You're going to be the 14 who go out to the masses and help to spread this message so that we win over the majority of our people, or let me rephrase that, not like a 50% majority. We win over the majority of what will be required to take back our destiny. That percentage is context dependent and therefore unknown, even unknowable. Anyone who would say otherwise is talking out of some other orifice. Okay. Hello back, Misty. Ryan Manley, another great one. See, so many great people. I appreciate and cherish all of you. Thank you for being here. Okay, so that is how you handle the I'm not a racist. I mean, I'm not the reverse. I'm not anti-white. Are there any questions relative to a person denying being anti-white? Any other questions about that? And we can move on to the second of the four. Well, we have Prince asking about organizing online and staying distributed. I think we're doing that. I think that's what this is. Every time we come together, it's organization. Every time we go back to our independent situations, it's a distributed network. Ultimately, for the organizational entity that I'm working on creating, I have envisioned a new form of organization that I think will be, at least for the foreseeable future, until nothing is perfect, but for the immediate future, once it's created, will be impervious to anti-white attacks. And hopefully that will be all the time we need to recapture that, whatever that amount is of our people, to win back our nations. What if they bring up spell check writes, what if they bring up colonization to explain why they are anti-white? We're going to get into that. We'll get into their excuses. That's an important element of this, because the next three responses are in a totally different category. There are really two categories here. You have the category of the denial, and then the category of the acceptance. Then that breaks out in three different ways, largely. So we'll get into that at one moment. Ezra, how do you respond when they say they can't be anti-white because they don't have power over whites? Well, of course, that's preposterous. I would actually say, well, that's preposterous. That is an explanation and a rejection, which is one of the forms that we will talk about in a second. Promethean Persona writes, I use anti-European. Are these two interchangeable? No. And the reason why they're not easily interchangeable is because too few white people personally identify as European. So it's another reason why I don't say anti-Western kind. I coined Western kind to represent who and what we are in our creations, as a beautiful alternative to whiteness, for example. But you can't say anti-Western kind because too few people appreciate and adopt that as part of their being. White, though, is widely accepted. Even in European circles, you have the Europeans understand that for Americans, white means themselves as well. So even where the word white isn't largely used. Okay. So I'm not seeing any more questions on that front. Let's move on then to what really is the first of the Promethean persona. You're most welcome. And again, why am I saying use anti-white rather than anti-European? It's for your benefit. Because if you use anti-European, and with some people it is going to work. Certainly with people in the cause, it's going to work. When you're talking to new people, new white people outside of the white positive sphere, you're going to get embroiled into a whole other conversation that is going to take you away from your objective. Does that make sense? Okay, here we go. Aryan, I see Aryan. Somebody wrote something about Aryan. The term has been thoroughly demonized by the anti-whites. So you really are just, it's like you have laid a landmine on the ground in front of you and then willingly stepped on it. Don't use the terms that they have specifically, either they coin or they have demonized and then given to you to use. So whatever you do, don't say anti-Aryan. That would be suicidal. That would just put an end to the conversion that you're making. Sokdes says, Horus the Avenger, I think that has something to do with some little rabbit, have put out points which helped me get the anti-white meme pathogens out of my mind. Very good. I'm glad you're working on them. I'm glad you're going free. I think you'll find a lot more also in Go Free, my book Go Free, and even more so in the second edition that's coming up. So good. I'm glad to hear that. Well done. Okay, so the first in the next category is when somebody says, when you charge them with anti-white and you say, or they say, yes, I am anti-white. So we've had a couple people so far tonight say that, what do you do when they embrace it? When they say, yes, they are anti-white, what do you do? Well, I'm going to ask you all, what is our objective? Why do we bother having these conversations? Kevin Savage just donated £2. Thank you very much for that, good sir. I appreciate that, and I appreciate you. Thank you very much. I am going to put this question to you. I have a phone call to answer. I'm afraid it's work related and have to answer it. So I am going to put you all on hold for a moment and answer that conversation. Why are we having these conversations in the first place? Why are we calling someone anti-white? What's the purpose of it? What is our objective? Because that is why, or that is going to determine how we respond to someone who says, yes, I'm anti-white. So if you all could hold on 1 second, I will be right back. I apologize if you could hear the phone vibrating. When the boss calls repeatedly, you have to answer. I'm afraid that's the way it is. So, did we have any answers? Let's see. All right, I don't see. All right. What we're trying to do, the only reason we're having these conversations is because we want to bring people to white well-being. You don't want to have an argument. The purpose of this is not just to defeat anti-whites in arguments. The purpose is not to just feed your ego by destroying them in an argument. The purpose is to bring people to white well-being. That's the purpose of this. So when someone says to you, well, they say they profess that they are anti-white. When you say that they are that they are an anti-white, you should just move away. If you are a salesman and you are trying to sell vacuum cleaners door to door to convert them, Rick says this. Is it Rick JMS? Exactly. That's it, brother. You're talking to these people about these things to convert them. That's the only reason we have these conversations. You should not be wasting time doing anything else. If you are wasting your time doing something other than converting people, you're no good to the cause of white well-being. You're just idle. You're just dawdling, and this is just, I don't know, for what, entertainment or something. No, the reason why you're talking to people is to convert them, to bring them over to white well-being, to give them this medicine, to give them this antidote to what they're suffering from. That is why you were talking to them in the first place. So if you meet someone and that person says, "Yeah, dang right, I'm anti-white," they say something of this nature, then your time will be wasted by talking to them. They have just told you everything you need to know. If you are selling vacuums and you go to someone's house and you say, "I have this great selection of vacuums," and they say, I just bought a brand new vacuum. I'm not getting another one." That is the best piece of information you could have just received, because you need to be giving your time to someone who might buy a vacuum, not to someone who is happy with the vacuum they just bought. So you want to immediately move on. This is the most important thing. I've talked about this on Tutar several times, and probably almost a year and a half ago now was the first time I talked about it. When you bring up anti-white, when you're talking about white well-being, you do not waste another breath on somebody who is happily anti-white. You can't convert them. There's no good that can come from that conversation. Now, having said that, is there an audience? Might there be an audience in the future? Is this making sense to you now? Do you see where I'm going with this? Is there an audience, or might there be an audience in the future? If there is one, or will be in the future, you can use that opportunity to compel that anti-white, because he or she has now proudly said, "I'm anti-white." No, the point here, I know what many people are thinking, because it's what we always do. Let's debate them. Let's tell them how being anti-white is wrong, or let's say, well, you won't have your socialism if you get rid of us white people, or you're not going to have these wonderful gadgets. Don't do that. That's not the purpose. Your purpose is, remember, is to sell white well-being to people. That's you're all, I've now christened you all proselytes, salesmen, saleswomen. That is what you all are. That is what I am. That is what we have to do. We have to save these people. Good night to Sue. I see that she says good night. She's heading off to bed. So I know it's very late for some people, where they live. So your purpose is to sell. So if a person says to you that damn right they are anti-white and there is an audience, or there will be an audience in the future, use that opportunity to say to that person, thank you. Now listen to this. You say, thank you for openly saying that you are anti-white and no longer, like the rest of the anti-whites, being a coward and hiding behind all of these lovely pretexts like diversity is a strength, right? You say that sort of thing because an audience will read that. And now what will the anti-white do? The best thing that the anti-white can do in that scenario is to say, right, it doesn't matter. We say that because we just use it to inflict harm. That would be fantastic. If you get an anti-white to say that to you, go buy yourself a banana split. And they type that out on the chat, go buy yourself a treat because you are going to win people to our cause. You're going to win people to white well-being when they read that and they see, wait a second, it's not about diversity as a strength. It's not about helping the crying brown babies, but in fact, it is about inflicting harm. Now, as I said a little bit earlier, the anti-white is very often going to couch this as revenge. Good, good. If they say whites should suffer, this is about revenge. We should take your lands. We should have a right to X, Y, and Z. Good. Again, buy yourself a treat. If you get so your objective then is to get them to reveal what really is inside of them. Does that make sense? Because you're thinking about the audience that is listening then or the audience in the future. That is what's important when it comes to having these discussions. Otherwise, there's no use in talking to them. If it's just you and you're on a street corner with an anti-white and he says something or she says something anti-white and you say, you're an anti-white, and they say, yes, I am, just walk away from them. There's no reason to continue to have that conversation. Just walk away. You're just wasting your breath. All right, the next answer of the final two is sarcasm. When you call someone an anti-white and they say, whatever, that's not a real word, and they laugh and they point at you and they say, what are you, some kind of idiot? What have they just revealed by saying that? Anybody? By making fun of the term anti-white, they have just revealed that they are anti-white. Prince. By making fun of it, it's the same. It's exact. What is someone's position when they make fun of the word racist? They don't believe in the concept. They object to it. Maybe they do hate people of different races, or maybe they want an ethno state and they realize that if there are people who believe in the concept of racism or use the concept of racism, that they won't be able to achieve the safe homelands and the safe communities, the communities that they want to live in that reflect our biospirit. So they want to make fun of it. So in either case, they're trying to defeat it. So that's what's happening when you call someone an anti-white and they mock you or they mock the word. They know very well what it is. That's how they're able to make fun of it. If they didn't know what it was, they wouldn't be able to make fun of it, would they? They would just have a dumb look on their face. They wouldn't be able to say, well, it's not in a dictionary. I mean, this is sort of, I mean, straightforward, isn't it? So again, if you are on a street corner with one of these people and no one else is around and they say something anti-white and you call them an anti-white and they mock it, you just walk away. But you are salesmen and women, you're proselytizers, you are redeemers, because this is a movement of redemption. You are trying to redeem our brothers and sisters. So if you are in an environment where there is somebody who mocks the use of anti-white, or they mock you, they mock the word, and there is an audience, or there will be an audience, use that opportunity to break that down so that they admit that they are anti-white. In so many words, admitting to being anti-white is that it's okay to, well, deny that there's any suffering for white people. That's good. Get them to deny that there's any suffering for white people. Get them to admit that it's revenge, and that they feel that that's justified. Get them to admit any of these things that ultimately arrive at anti-white conclusions. Anything that you can get them to say that results in an anti-white conclusion is good for an audience that's either live or will be there in the future. Does that make sense? When people read that, when they see the imbecile mocking the word anti-white, or they see the imbecile mocking you, and then you break it down and you show and you get them to say that indeed they are for the revenge. They think that no, there is no suffering for white people. That you can ask them in that kind of a scenario, do you? So then you are all for white people being fired from their jobs and losing their source of income to put food in their child's bellies, so that a non-white person can be hired in their place to achieve diversity quotas. When they go to defend that position, you've just won for your future audience. Ignore that person. He or she is an idiotic foil. We just had Prince write again, $5. I think he wrote, "We're going to win." It just jumped up off the screen. Thank you very much for that super chat, brother. I appreciate it very much. We are going to win, without question. So, again, and the reason why I focus repeatedly on the context and the objectives is because I am not going to be able to be there with you in every one of these conversations. If you understand the context and you know the objective, you are going to be able to come up with the arguments. You are going to be able to come up with the ideas, the things to say to achieve those objectives. And the more you work at it, the sharper you will get at it over time. If I lay out a hammer and nails for you, if I lay out a saw for you, you eventually say, you pick up the saw. I don't have to, and wood, I don't have to actually show you how to use the saw. Eventually, you will grab the saw, you will feel the bladed side, you will see that it's harder than the wood, you will realize that the saw cuts through the wood. I don't have to show you how to work the saw. That is how this works. I'm sharing the context and the objective, and you will make these things happen. Okay, here we go. That's the sarcasm. Penultimate response is educate and reject. And we talked about that a little bit earlier. You call somebody anti-white, they say, well, anti-white is used a lot by that Jason Kuna and the blah, blah, blah. And you just want to accomplish XYZ for white people and harm all the non-white people. And so therefore I reject it. Again, what have they just revealed? They've just revealed that they're anti-white, that their doctrine is anti-whiteism. Just as before, if it's one-on-one, walk away. Don't waste another breath. If there is or will be an audience, use the opportunity to point out that they wouldn't deconstruct any non-white groups' objections to the infliction of harm on them. That, in fact, they're cowards for not doing the same to the non-white groups that they do to you. Point out that they are, that when they reject something that they just defined as existing, that they're being imbecilic. And remember, all of this is to get them, this person, this interlocutor, to get them to admit to things that are anti-white in outcome. You're endeavoring to get them to admit to things that are anti-white in outcome. All right. So, well, we need to have a merit-based immigration system that focuses on the third world because of XYZ. Well, what's the outcome there for the white population? That we import a bunch of a new leadership class, that we import a bunch of non-whites that are on the right side of their bell curve. Their children won't be. but they are. And so we import them, and then our civilization changes, and then this anti-white discrimination expands. Get them to admit to those things for the future audiences, and you'll win. Okay, and finally, the final response we have here. Actually, that was the 4 responses. So denial, embrace, sarcasm, reject, and educate. And then I did want to mention that it back to what I was saying earlier, that this really is a battle of will. So and to say that a lot of people are afraid to say that something is anti-white because of this moral structure. So I'm going to give you all homework to do. The only way to build a muscle, the only way to build a muscle is to use it. Today, if you have not used anti-white before and anti-whiteism before, I want you today or tomorrow to get onto a chat somewhere, get onto a thread somewhere, find somebody who says something anti-white, and then respond with, that's anti-white. That's anti-whiteism. If you've never done it before, do it today, do it tomorrow, do it the next day, get into the habit. If you have a family member who's intransigent or is neutral or is potentially positive, and you've never used anti-white before, I want you to use it today or tomorrow, depending where you are on the world. I want you to, when you're both sitting in front of that television or you're both looking through that magazine and you see that advert or that advertisement that has something anti-white in it, I want you to say, wow, that's anti-white. You know what? And for those of you who are brave, and I want you all to come back to me the next time we have this discussion, the next time we do another Going Free episode, I want you all to come back to me, and I want you to tell me about these episodes. How did they go? How empowered did you feel as a consequence? I want to hear your testimony about these things. For those who are really brave, for those of you who are really brave, you're going to be in an airport in the next couple days. You're going to be at a Subway restaurant. You're going to be in a doctor's office in the next couple days. And there are going to be other people in the room. And there are going to be magazines laid out. There might be a television on the wall. And there's going to be an anti-white ad. There's going to be an anti-white TV show. There's going to be a trailer for an anti-white movie. And I want you to say out loud in that office, in that terminal, out loud, wow, that is really anti-white. Let everyone hear you there. You're not going to be in an environment where you're going to be physically attacked. Don't go to the local Antifa meeting and at the Antifa bar where they're all hyped up on drugs and drunk and whatever else is going on, and try this out. Do this at your doctor's office. Do this at the bus terminal. Do this at the airport. Say out loud, that's really anti-white. Let everybody know that there is a changing current in our society. Make this a weekly event if you haven't already. I do it every single time, everywhere I go. If I see anything anti-white, I will say out loud. I have never had anyone, now granted, I'm physically fit and etc., but I've never had anyone say to me, and of course, even though I'm physically fit, a woman could insult me if she wanted to. I've never had that happen. I've never had a doctor's office say, well, we're not going to serve you because you just said something was anti-white. You're not going to get treatment here. Instead, you know what I get? Does anybody know what I get? Maybe 70+% of the time. I get people who nod their heads 70% of the time. I get people who, give the shrug the shoulders and kind of like, yeah, kind of a face. That's true. That really is anti-white. That's what I get when I say this. And that's what you're going to get. The worst that's going to happen is that people will just ignore you. That's the worst that's going to happen. People will just look up and look down. Sometimes you might see, and this is also really sad to see, I see this as well in the faces of people when I do this. Whites, our brothers and sisters, is abject fear, the fear of a child I see on their faces. When I say, man, that's anti-white, they immediately, the mirror neurons in their brains reflect what I've said. They think of themselves doing the same thing in that environment. And then the fear of the child comes over their face because they've had a lifetime of being browbeaten for being white and being told how evil it is to be white and to care about white people, how awful that is, how all of the people who care about whites are hideous and stupid and worthy of being dehumanized, worthy of being fired from their jobs and not being able to feed themselves and their children. That is what you'll see on some of their faces, and that induces a sadness of me that is immeasurable, because that is a psychologically traumatized people. Our brothers and sisters, unable to escape this anti-white narrative, have been turned into these quivering, sniveling, cowardly, frightened children. But for the rest of them out there, there will be nods. So I want you all to do this, and we're going to go on this note. We're going to go on an upbeat. Let me take a quick look at the chat. We've been going for a really long time, but we covered a lot of information. Prince says, we're pretty sure that I'm afraid I've defeated plenty of those people in my in fights, my friend. No worries. Okay, I see a lot of people saying that they're going to do it. Good. That's great news. That's fantastic. I'm seeing a lot of people saying that. I've got some private how many private messages do I have here? I have quite a few. Yeah, actually, Prince, read Born Guilty, and in Crucible you'll read a lot about those fights. It was all with non-whites, and the majority of them were black, who came to beat me up for caring about white well-being, and I never lost a fight. There's a saying in the States, and it might be just it might be all around the world. I don't know, but it's certainly in the States, and I don't know if it's specifically in the southern United States, but here in Virginia, the saying is very true that it's not the size of the dog in the fight, but the fight in the dog. And I am brimming with the fight. Emma Arian, is that what it is? Says, I've been doing it for months now. Can't help myself telling people that things are, I guess it's anti-white in public. Do it. How can we ensure that these Promethean persona, how can we ensure that these techniques remain strong across European languages? This is something that we'll have to have a show on and we'll have to discuss. And I don't know if Jared George is still in the audience, but I think I'll bring Jared George on for that specific stream. I have been speaking with different brothers and sisters from across Europe and asking them about these terms, anti-white, and what's interesting is, and some of the others, what's interesting is, and I pointed out a little earlier, that a lot of these Americanisms, if you will, these American turns of phrase of English, end up being used in and understood across the different European languages in the manner that they are delivered in American English. And so I think it is a force of the will that makes it so. So, for example, I was speaking with a young woman in Germany, lovely woman, and we were talking about white and how, and she essentially was saying, that the older people might not exactly understand anti-white there, and that they might need a little bit of like an extra sentence or two to understand what's meant by this Americanism. And I think it will work. I think if it takes an extra sentence or two, it's sort of like the phrase, the identitarian movement and how that came across to the United States, and it was able to be adopted from France. So this passing of words, and the white race is a brilliant race, and we can have 100 words for a cup. And once we understand that whatever word means a cup, then we adopt it and we own it. And so I think that's the way this will end up working across the different languages across Europe. But one of the really valuable things is that English is now the lingua franca, if you will. And so pretty much all the young people uh, across Europe, to my understanding, I'm open to being corrected, but what I've been shared with from all around the world, people from all around the world, is that the young people speak English to one degree or more and would be able to adopt these phrases, apply the proper definition, and then use them appropriately with each other. We have a Lunar Octopus super chatting with $4.99 here at the end of the stream. We probably wouldn't have all of this anti-white rhetoric if you know who did not arrive here through Ellis Island. Well, there's no doubt that certainly very powerful non-white groups who are also anti-white are problematic. And that combined with the anti-whites in our own group is the real problem that we have to tackle. And it's important to remember, though, and I'll say this too in closing, that the focus has to be on who we are and us at the center of our story, rather than on a group that is inflicting harm on us, a specific non-white group, this group or that group, or because if you put them in the center of our story, then again, it's like going back to whether you are a Gentile or not, you're just in the periphery of someone else's story. If you're a victim in the periphery of someone else's story, you're still just in the periphery. Put yourself at the center. We put ourselves at the center in white well-being. Those out there are either neutrals or anti-whites. The anti-whites are our victimizers, whom we protect ourselves from. And that means we will protect ourselves from targets or from victimizers, big and small, wealthy and poor, living in the castle 2 neighborhoods away, or living in the ghetto 2 neighborhoods away. That is why we put ourselves in the center of our story. The focus is on us rather than on others. Does that make sense? It is critical. I know that these things seem small. I know that they seem like they can just be passed over like another set of prescriptions, but they're not. This is the antidote. This is what will cure you. So, having said that, I'm going to wrap up now on the final admonition that you all go out and make sure you say anti-white in threads on anti-white on JF's show. For anybody who says anything anti-white, use anti-whiteism. Use it again and again and again. Anti-whiteism, anti-whiteism. Use it again and again. And then also I want you to use it someplace public. Use it at the doctor's office. Use it while you're standing in line at the grocery store. You're not going to be jumped unless it's the ghetto. I mean, don't do it there. But if you're someplace safe, use it there. Use it out loud. Use it proud. We deserve to be alive. You are beautiful people. We make no bones about it. We're taking our destiny back. And I will see you all next time.